started. I'll wait for you.
Great, just 1 second. I'm just making sure we have everybody noted. Great. Yes, I'm ready to begin.
Okay, good evening, everyone. The time is 5:04 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to East Bay Community Energy's Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, June 15th. This board meeting is being conducted pursuant to provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmissions at public meetings. AB 361 suspends some Brown Act rules related to teleconferencing, but continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. The agency has met all applicable notice requirements. Please note we are using the Zoom platform. There is information on the Zoom link and on using Zoom on the EBCE website at the address listed on the agenda. If you're using telephone only, you are able to raise your hand at this meeting by pressing *9. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to our clerk to please call the roll.
Great, thank you very much. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany.
Present.
Thank you. Berkeley.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Dublin. Dublin. Fremont.
Here.
Thank you. Hayward.
Present.
Okay. Livermore. Livermore. Newark. Newark. Oakland.
Here.
Thank you. Piedmont.
Here.
Pleasanton.
Present.
Thank you. Tracy. Tracy. Union City.
Here.
Thank you. Community Advisory Committee.
Present.
Thank you. San Leandro.
Present.
Emeryville.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, now will be the time for public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. However, as chair, I will allow public comment on the budget at this time. I was made aware of some folks with young children who will be attending, who are not able to stay for the entire meeting. So I will allow that. Just go ahead and use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or submit a speaker card and the clerk will call your name. Actually, everyone who speaks, we ask that you submit a speaker card. If you don't wish to state your name, you could say member of the public. And please remember, if you are calling in by phone, you're going to press *9 and that will raise your hand in Zoom. Mr. Clerk, how many speaker cards have been submitted for public comment for this part of the meeting?
We have 11 speaker cards and 1, 2, 3, 6,
Okay.
6 hands raised.
I am going to grant 90 seconds of public comment. So a minute and a half for this public comment period. And please remember that if all items that we are hearing on the agenda will be heard again at the time that the item is being recognized. So I will have you take it away, Adrian, to go ahead and call speaker cards first, and then call people in order that their hands are raised. And
Great, thank you.
If there are any electronic comments, you may read those into the record.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to recognize Priscilla Ward. Priscilla Ward, recognize you for 1.5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Priscilla Ward, and I am here to support EBCS's endeavor to support the Children's Hospital Oakland, otherwise known as UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital asthma program. I have been an employee for 45 years. I recently retired, and I am a respiratory therapist. And most of my career there has been as an asthma educator. And I got into a specialty of asthma education because I wanted to make a difference. And I saw many things throughout my 45 years, even patients that were admitted to the ICU and had bad sequelae. And my rewarding part of my job was doing asthma education and keeping patients out of the hospital, decreasing their symptoms and preventing death. But it was also very frustrating because we did not have enough resources to serve our population, which is much larger than the West Bay side. So we would appreciate very much your support in supporting our children with asthma and in this endeavor. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I would like to call 3 speakers at a time. So first, Catherine, my apologies, De Harling, Sine Bushentov, and Virginia Ford. First, Catherine Harling. Hold on 1 second.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Katie DeHarling, and I'm a pediatrician and the Associate Medical Director for Pediatrics at one of La Clínica de la Raza's medical sites in Oakland. And I also would like to, on behalf of myself and the community of pediatricians and nurses and pediatric nurse practitioners at La Clínica, I'd like to express our strong support for the proposed grant to the pediatric asthma program at UCSF Benioff's Children's Hospital in Oakland. Some of you may know La Clínica. We were founded over 50 years ago with the idea that we wanted to provide world-class healthcare to everyone, regardless of income level. And regardless of insurance status. And this is very much also in line with Children's Hospital Oakland and their pulmonary team, and looking at the whole patient, the whole family, and the whole community to address healthcare disparities and improve the lives of low-income families. Children's Hospital and La Clínica have had a really strong relationship for years. And we referred our most severe asthma patients to the pulmonary team at Children's Hospital. Our pediatric asthma patients at La Clínica are particularly vulnerable. Many of our patients are at higher risk for asthma due to living in polluted urban areas near freeways, having schools that are near freeways, and having exposure to secondhand smoke. Beyond these risk factors for acquiring asthma, they're also at particularly high risk for developing complications of asthma. And this is due to a lot of
I think we
My
lost.
apologies. Okay.
Yeah.
We will return to Katie to finish her public comment. I will recognize Sine Bushentov. Hold on 1 second.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you.
Can you? Can I begin?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna read my email that I sent. My name is Sana Bushentov. My daughter was diagnosed with asthma when she was 2 years old. We definitely support the donation from East Bay Community Energy to support and enhance the asthma program at Children's Hospital. When my daughter was little, like back then, it wasn't that bad time. Every year it gets harder and harder for her. And we have been trying all the medication and the asthma control, but it still wasn't working as much as we want. But suddenly when she was 14 years old, she got really sick. She got almost like breathing, her heart stopped breathe, like she stopped breathing and she got a heart attack. I had to do CPR on her while I'm waiting for the paramedic to come. Her face was blue and her lips were blue, and it was the end of it. I didn't stop the CPR until the paramedic came and took over from me. They took her to the Eden Hospital ER, but she was only 14 years old. So immediately the intubator, they put intubation on her, and they took her to Children's Hospital in Oakland. It was the best decision made ever. It was very dangerous to move her from Eden Hospital to Children's Hospital because she had tubes on her lungs. She stayed at ICU for 7 days, monitoring her breathing.
My apologies, speaker. We have a 1.5 minute limit to public comment.
Yeah, it's really fast. So after that, Dr. Gibbs took over to get her the asthma control and following with her every day, believe me, every day. And I was really worried during COVID that she cannot get her shot or her daily control. But Dr. Gibbs, she did authorize that she can come during COVID at the hospital.
Thank you. I'm going to need to move to the next speaker. Thank you. Gina Lewis. Gina Lewis, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you and good evening. I'm a pediatrician and the medical director of the Federally Qualified Health Center at UCSF, Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. And I want to share my strong support of EBCE's proposed investment into our pediatric asthma program. And thank you so much for giving me the chance to share a little bit about my experience at our clinic and hospital. We are the largest primary care clinic in the East Bay, serving over 10,000 children and families with over 30,000 visits a year. And we're embedded in the Children's Hospital that sees over 70,000 patients a year. We also collaborate with places like La Clínica de la Raza. When our patients graduate, they get their adult care there. We are all dedicated to serving children, youth, and young adults and their families who are suffering from asthma. And our patients are living with poverty and the housing instability and pollution. We've done a lot of research around asthma and how to prevent it. And in fact, I was just in our asthma clinic seeing an 11-year-old who is not able to play volleyball because of her asthma. So I'm happy and excited that you're thinking about donating to our asthma program so that kids like my patient can live a full, happy, and healthy life. And thank you for supporting our program. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Candice Crago, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm from Folsom, California, and I am also here in support of the board's decision to donate to UCSF Children's Hospital in Oakland. My daughter is 4 years old right now, and 8 months ago, I credit UCSF for saving her life. We were life lifted from the Sacramento area to UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital in Oakland. And we definitely almost lost her. It was a really scary event for us. She was in the PICU for 2 weeks there. She's had asthma since she was 10 months old. And we never received the proper asthma care. We didn't receive the proper asthma education for her. And part of that was the reason for her stay for so long there at UCSF. So it's definitely impacted our lives greatly. Since she was 10 months old, she's been on breathing treatments. Now we have a really great care plan for her. And I feel really hopeful for the future, for her future. Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Maria Echeveste, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Maria Echeveste, and I am a member of the board of directors of UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, Oakland. I'm also the president and CEO of the Opportunity Institute, which focuses on social and economic mobility and racial justice. And In the same way that research has now proven that there are social determinants to health, we are working on social determinants to educational outcomes. I welcome the opportunity to add my voice to support East Bay Community Energy's proposed investment in the asthma program. We can spend hours talking about why some children, unfortunately, those lower income from marginalized communities, suffer so much from asthma, where freeways are located, where power plants are located. And this investment will help us respond to the needs of our more vulnerable children and families. And I just want to stress how critical support for these kinds of programs is to the well-being of children who may have no other choice but to go to the emergency department of Benioff Children's. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beth Weinberger, you recognize.
I'm sorry, Adrian, I just want to interrupt for just one moment before you start Beth's time. Can you please promote Member Hannon, who is joining by phone, and I know the last numbers of his phone number are 7760. So I just want to make sure his attendance is noted and that he's promoted as a speaker. Pardon me.
Can you give me the last 4 digits of his telephone number one more time, please?
7760.
Yes, thank you. Great, thank you. Beth Weinberger, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to oppose the proposed donation to Children's Hospital. I believe very strongly, I'm a longtime resident of Oakland, that this, and have been very involved in promoting the primary objectives of EBCE, to promote and to provide clean energy to the entire community. And I believe that this donation is not in alignment with EBCE's primary objectives to do that. I think EBCE should invest that money into equity programs and projects that address root causes of asthma, rather than getting into supporting medical treatment options, which are well supported by other parts of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rick DeSilva. Rick DeSilva, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Yes, hi, good evening, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak here and join the other voices in support of the proposed investment in the Benioff Children's Hospital Pediatric Asthma Program. I am here on behalf of the Oakland Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, and thank you all for actually being members of the Chamber. We're excited to have you as members, and we're excited to hear that you will be potentially relocating into the community on 8th and Alice. But as you probably know, Chinatown is a community that is has suffered from poor air quality, and actually has some of the worst air quality in Oakland, arguably the worst air quality in Oakland, given its proximity to the port and to the freeway. And its businesses, residents, and schools have suffered because of that. So again, the Oakland Chinatown Chamber of Commerce and I personally are here to support the investment into the pediatric asthma program. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on one second. Blair Beekman. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the meeting today. You know, there's been a person speaking at public comment time over the past few months now. Tom Kelly, is that his name? I don't know if that is his name, but he's been offering some pretty intense public comment about you know, our current practices within EBCE and the relationship between renewable energy and what can be a clean energy future with nuclear. And a carbon-free nuclear, I suppose, would be the way to say it. That includes nuclear. I'm hoping that, you know, with this war going on with Putin right now, when we are at a time of war, we tend to make really irrational, bad decisions. And EBCE and many within the state of California have been preparing for the past few years for these sort of irrational decisions coming down the pipe, you know, in how to talk about the future of renewables that I think, and its relationship with fossil fuels that I think has been commendable. And we're trying to put that in its place. I really hope that we can make efforts that our activist community into renewable ideas can better talk about what they can, what we can all expect in the next few years, and how to address this ongoing issue that's being talked about the future of carbon-free nuclear versus renewables. Good luck. How that could be an open conversation for ourselves in the following months. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Freeling, recognized for 1.5 minutes. Robert Freeling. Okay. We'll come back to Robert Freeling.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me
Great,
now?
thank you. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't figure out how this thing works. So yeah, I worked for about 10 years for Paul Fenn Local Power, the creator of Community Choice in California. So I'm quite familiar with AB 117, the authorizing legislation that created Community Choice. And I also know that Paul was deeply concerned about asthma and climate change, and it was one of the reasons why he created Community Choice. However, in agreement with certain other speaker who already spoke, it is not the purpose of a Community Choice aggregation program to be a public charity to donate cash to charities, no matter how well intended. The legislature specifically lays out the definition of a community choice as a buyer's program to leverage negotiation of contracts for electricity. That's what you are. And as far as what you are authorized to do, the language of AB 117 specifically authorizes only certain powers for a CCA. And those powers are quite narrow. They're again, to leverage the negotiation of contracts, can provide consumer protections, and to reduce transaction costs to consumers. Now, that does not mean that you can't help the local hospital and provide benefits, but it needs to be in line with your primary purpose. So for example, you could give some other amount of money worth other than $15 million specifically in cash. You could help support the development of a local solar energy project at the hospital, which would provide the hospital with discounted or free energy. That would be in line with your project, with your goal. But just a donation in cash, I think, is outside the scope of the purpose.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope Salazar, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I regret that the board has put us in the position, the people who oppose this funding, of being sort of cast as anti-child or anti-healthcare. I will say that both of my parents are pediatric subspecialists, a cardiologist and a hematologist. And so I very strongly sympathize. In fact, I grew up with my parents attending to very critically ill children every single day and mourning the children that they lost. So I strongly sympathize with those parents and caregivers whose children are suffering. But I do agree with Mr. Freeling and Ms. Weinberger that I feel that EBCE is a clean energy company and not a healthcare company, and that our mission is to increase our clean energy provision to these very communities, and that racial justice can be served by proactively accelerating our reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by providing higher and higher proportions of clean and reliable energy and resilient microgrids in our community, and expanding the proportion of people who can have access to that. And I wonder if we don't, if we instead fund, however well-meaning, these asthma clinics, how many more children will we be walking through the doors of these very clinics if we can't get our greenhouse gas emissions down? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chris Peebles, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Chris Peebles. I wrote my senior thesis in college on the Riker Act and participated in a number of municipalization efforts in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s. I'm currently somewhat of an expert on electrification of heavy duty transit. I oppose this donation. It's very far away from your basic goals. And one of the major causes of asthma is heavy duty transportation. And East Bay Community Energy has been completely absent in that space. If you're going to spend $15 million, spend it on providing electricity and helping heavy duty transportation, trucks and buses, et cetera, become electrified, and therefore eliminating the diesel exhaust that causes asthma. My mother was the night chairman of volunteers at UCSF when it was only on Parnassus Avenue. And I have huge respect for UCSF, but it is an enormously wealthy organization. It doesn't really need your $15 million. And you should be spending it on something that's related to your purpose.
Thank you. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
So I didn't actually think we would be addressing this topic, but let me just say that I am also opposed to this contribution to UCSF as much as I love the organization and the hospital. One of the speakers mentioned that asthma rates are higher where power plants are located. And I have been trying for months to try and get folks to understand that EBCE is producing incredible amounts of electricity and carbon emissions from its purchase of fossil fuel generated electricity. So let's clean that up. Let's spend that money on buying renewable power and carbon-free power rather than our reliance on natural gas plants. The other thing I wanted to say is that two things. We've seen, we're concerned about a lack of public participation in our meetings. So let's make the documents that we send out to the public readable by the average person who's interested in EBCE and its work. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I would love to see a summary of what we've done on the local development business plan so that all of us, the board, the community, can actually understand what we have achieved over the past 4 years in implementing the local development business plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Climate Health Now, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you all. Sorry for not changing my name or not realizing I should change my name. I'm Dr. Amanda Milstein. I'm a primary care pediatrician. I work at UBCP Hilltop Pediatrics in Richmond. Our clinic has been serving the Richmond community for more than 50 years and refers our patients to the asthma specialists at Children's Hospital Oakland as well as to their emergency department. On behalf of myself and my colleagues, I also would like to express strong support for the proposed grant to the pediatric asthma program. The community in which I practice is highly impacted by asthma for many of the reasons you all have been sharing. Rates of asthma in Richmond are twice that of the national average. My colleagues and I regularly see the impacts of asthma on our patients and their families, including ER visits, missed days of school and work, and the expenses and time that accompany managing a chronic medical condition. I also want to share with you a specific patient story that involves a patient I met on one of my very first days practicing in Richmond, an 11-year-old boy with asthma and allergies who, for the purposes of this, I'll call David, who over the span of 6 weeks came in to see me 8 times, wheezing every single time, having come straight from his baseball field in Richmond. And when his sister said to me, "This always happens," she really was telling the truth. This had been the pattern for years prior to my meeting him. And despite all of my medical intervention, I did also have to recommend that David stop playing baseball.
Speaker.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Jessica Tovar, Local Clean Energy Alliance, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I want to just remind everybody, I have almost 20 years of being a community organizer in environmental justice communities. Worked with folks who lived by the PG&E power plant in San Francisco, Chevron oil refinery, as well as many other campaigns, including fighting medical waste incineration in San Leandro, in the Tri-Cities, in the cities surrounding San Leandro. So what I'm trying to say is what we're trying to do is actually transform energy into a clean energy system that actually works for our communities and really address the root causes that cause asthma and other environmental sickness. And so we are not opposed at all to the hospital. However, this gift of $15 million is out of line and out of the mission of East Bay Community Energy. And it undercuts the environmental justice community's call from the very beginning of advocating for this EBCE program to invest in local clean energy development. And so what EBCE is doing right now is literally driving a wedge between our community, and it's absolutely disgusting, straight out of the playbook, the corporate playbook that really tries to disrupt organizing. So we have no animosity against the hospital and the work that you do, but this is absolutely out of line. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. Sine, you are recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I would like to finish what I started. My daughter, when she was diagnosed with the asthma, when she was 2 years old, and she got that bad heart arrest.
My apologies. I'm going to have to go to the next speaker. Thank you. Amos White, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is White. I lead an organization called 100K Trees for Humanity. At the last executive committee meeting, we put forward a proposal to ask for your consideration to fund a portion of the surplus dollars to a tree planting program to provide the clean air, cooler communities, and reduced energy costs in 3 targeted communities across the East Bay. That proposal we took to the Community Advisory Committee, and with broad support, with their support, bring back to you a proposal to slow this process down for greater public input so that other proposals which do benefit the community as well in providing clean air, in providing reduced energy costs, can be considered as it is in line with your mission. We do hope you do consider the proposal we have, if that does come up for vote at this meeting, or if you so choose to push this process off for greater community input. I want to thank you for your time and consideration and look forward to your decision. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Robert Johnson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes. Robert Johnson.
They're very wise and very good one.
Hello. Okay. We move on to People Power Solar Cooperative. You're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Crystal Huang, and it's really great to be speaking with you all here again. I grew up with asthma, and I'm now an energy democracy advocate to address the root cause of what is leading to my health condition, and that is simply to transform our energy system. EBCE's local development business plan laid out a very clear pathway to do just that. And I'm speaking on behalf of the People Power Solar Cooperative, who is one of the recipients of the first and only Community Innovation Grant with the EBCE. And we have more than 100 members all across the EBCE territory, from Alameda County to the city of Stockton, working to advance an energy system that will provide the health, wealth, and stability of our communities deserve. And the grant was the beginning to show a different path for members of the communities to show up and advance local resilience, clean energy with institutions like EBCE. And so in a time where investor-owned utilities are attacking people's ability to build resilient energy, we really need EBCE more than ever to put resources in making that happen. EBCE should invest that $15 million in funds into the local development business plan programs that advance resilience and equitable access to local clean energy for our customers, such as community microgrids, energy efficiency upgrade for very low income homes and buildings. So really, we support the redirecting of $15 million to instead fund asthma prevention by investing in a just transition to clean energy for equity in environmental justice communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Marjana Moini, you are recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a physician, I'm a cancer doctor, and I speak on behalf of Physicians for Social Responsibility, SFB. I'm on the board of Physicians for Social Responsibility. We are not in favor of donating $15 million to a hospital to just throw in more medications and to throw in more interventions at our community. We're in favor of reinvesting that money in the community for procedures, for interventions that can actually prevent asthma. So we are letting you know that the hospitals, actually, all these nonprofit hospitals have community benefits. They're supposed to invest their resources into the community. It's not the other way around. So I don't know how this idea came about for the community to give to the hospitals. That is not the way the direction of the money should be. I thank you for your time. And if you need to have more comments from our physicians, you know, we do have a large group of physicians that can come and speak to you directly. If you have time, we are all very happy to meet with you.
Thank you very much. Sheena Robinson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Great. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Sheena. I am with the Asian Pacific Environmental Network. We organize Asian American immigrants and refugees and have 2,500 members across Oakland and Alameda County within EBCE's territory. Our members are majority renters and living in environmental justice communities, dealing with many of the things that we've talked about today, including you know, mold, lead in homes, living in industrial corridors, not having access to energy efficiency or weatherization, and with increasing heat and smoke days, the health effects are going to get worse. So I'm here to speak in support of redirecting the $15 million to actually asthma prevention and addressing the root causes and investing directly into environmental justice communities so that folks don't have to get to the hospital and folks don't have to have increasing rates of asthma and look for treatment and service, but can actually breathe clean air where they live and in their neighborhoods. Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Melissa Yu, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, board members. My name is Melissa Yu, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of the Sierra Club. We're really disappointed about this budget proposal to give $15 million to the Children's Hospital. While the hospital is a valued institution within our community, there's no doubt about that. EBC is a public agency whose stated purpose is, and I quote, reinvest the earnings back into the community to create local green jobs, green energy jobs, local programs, and clean power projects. Ratepayer funds would have a greater impact as investments in equity programs and projects that would directly address root causes of asthma and preventions of triggers. We really hope you can postpone this part of the budget and take the advisory committee's recommendation into consideration, which we'll hear about later. We want to see this money go into places and organizations who do not have these resources. This budget decision was also not considered with adequate public process. And we really hope that, similar to the Community Innovation Grant, we want there to be a public application process for organizations to apply and have a process to vet the organizations before determining where the money will go. It is really frustrating to see this top-down decision from this agency, this public agency, and feel like the community is being pitted against each other. We don't doubt the value of the hospital, but want to see a more public process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you. Robert Johnson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Good afternoon, you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I guess Children's Hospital is a fantastic institution. There are many equally fantastic institutions that provide work in the East Bay and the time should be funded. But essentially, it makes it difficult to decide which one to choose. And there's a sense of that, which is that you really should only focus on those that are energy related and really is legally required. The description of the item is basically it is a gift and it is a donation, and there's nothing that is expected in return other than getting your name on the letterhead. And this is troubling, basically, is under state law. For members of the committee, from whom are members of the League of California States, 2006 annual conference annually describes this very well. The panel on public funds, spoiler alert, is legal. The Constitution, Article 60, Section 6, prohibits giving gifts of this nature, basically gifts which are not expected in return. And it then violates the Constitution. And according to it's the charter and the joint agreement that East Bay Power was there, which limits energy and related issues.
Speaker, my apologies.
Should not be funded as a no law. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Adrian, I'm going to suggest that if Mr. Johnson is still on the line, I didn't hear his comments completely. If he has access to a computer and is able to submit written comment, Adrian can share that with the board in advance of the item being called. So sorry, Adrian, go ahead and continue with public comment.
Great, thank you. Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I had intended to comment on agenda item 14, but I will give it now. I think we all agree that environmental pollution falls most heavily on low-income communities of color who live near highways and heavy transport centers like the Port of Oakland. But I think one of the important things to think about is the time to pay off. EBCE's tools are much better suited to helping asthma sufferers before the fact, rather than addressing the problem after the fact. Why would we want to wait for medical science to propose new treatments, establish new clinics, while the community of sufferers just continues to grow? What can, recently the Washington Post published an article that shows us the urgency of doing something about environmental pollution. This article stated, this headline, block by block, data shows pollution's stark toll on people of color, Mobile air quality monitoring in San Francisco and Oakland challenges the accuracy of stationary monitoring sites across the country. So EBCE should stick to its business, make investments more in line, like transportation, electrification, and that also
Thank you, Speaker.
The local economy. Thank you very much.
Great. Dr. Ann Maris, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, thank you. My name's Dr. Ann Maris. I'm a biochemist and educator, community volunteer, and a resident of unincorporated Alameda County. called the Eden area. So Ashland, Cherryland, San Lorenzo, Southern Castro Valley, and parts of San Leandro. And I'm calling in support of the $100,000 trees East Bay Cooler Communities Plan. We really need East Bay Community Energy to help with the 100,000 trees plan, because what it does is directly come into the community, hire from within the community, and affect the climate crisis at the most basic level by providing more tree cover, which we all know does carbon sequestration. We're right at the intersection of the 580 and the 238, and we have very high asthma rates, lots of low-income communities, and we really need your help. So I'm calling in support of the $100,000 trees. It's a Black Lead Urban Reforestation Tree Planting nonprofit. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And our last speaker is Margie Lewis. You recognized for 1.5 minutes.
My name is Margie Lewis, and I'm an Oakland resident. I urge you to redirect the $15 million proposed donation to UCSF Benioff for funding asthma prevention, and instead invest that amount of money in local programs that advance equitable access to local clean energy for EBCE's customers, which would directly reduce the root causes and triggers of asthma. BIPOC communities have the highest asthma rates due to high levels of environmental pollution. This local pollution from industrial sources and in-home are directly linked to childhood triggers and adult onset, and these communities are not being served. The proposed donation is shockingly misdirected in terms of EBCE's purpose as stated in the Joint Powers Agreement, and dwarfs all prior community support donations. The UCSF Ben Children's Hospital is extremely well funded with over $2 billion in assets and over $500 million donations just this year. Donating $15 million of our net from 2021 and 22 was only made available for public comment the Monday before May 18th. Board of Directors meeting. This hardly meets the completely transparent process advertised in the EBCE agency website. We cannot donate this money to them. The communities need it, and there are many programs that we can fund with this money. They have all the money that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's no further public comment.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you to all of the public speakers. Adrian, could you please promote member Hannon? He is now at a computer, so his should be able to find him by his name.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now, everyone, again, thank you to all of our public speakers. We will be hearing the budget item later in the meeting, but at this time, we will be going into closed session. I predict it will be brief. So if you're hanging in for the meeting, we will be available at this link again shortly. But members of the board, if any of you still need the link to closed session, it should have been sent to you a couple times this afternoon, but please raise your hand and let Adrian know if you need the link.
Great, I'll send it in a few minutes.
Great, thank you, Adrian. I see member Jordan needs it and member Hannon needs it. And that looks like it, but everyone else, I will see you at the closed session link and see you back here in a few. Hi, Adrian. We're trickling back in.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Okay, almost a quorum. All right, I believe we have 8 members present, and a couple more will be joining as soon as they find the right link. In the meantime, I will ask if our general counsel is prepared to report out of closed session, please.
Sure, Madam Chair, there is nothing to report out of closed session today.
Very good, thank you. Next up, board, we have our consent agenda. Are there anything, any items to pull, any questions or corrections on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none. I see one raised hand for public comment. Adrian, please recognize Al Weinreb for one, let's do 1 minute.
Okay, great. Hold on 1 second. Great. Al Weinreb, you are recognized for 1 minute. Al
You there, Al? All right, you might have been a leftover hand raise from earlier in the meeting, but Al, raise your hand if you lower your hand and then raise it again if you want to speak at public comment for any of the other items. But Adrian, has anyone submitted public comment for items on the consent agenda?
We have no written comments for the consent agenda.
Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and close public comment at this time. Colleagues, is there any discussion or a motion in a second?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
So I got a motion from the member from Pleasanton and a second from the member from Hayward. Please call the roll.
Great, thank you. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany. Albany. Berkeley.
Here.
Is it yay?
Yes, yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. Yes.
Thank you. Dublin? Dublin?
Yes.
Thank you. Fremont?
Yes.
Hayward?
Aye.
Livermore? Newark?
Aye.
Oakland?
Aye.
Piedmont?
Aye.
Pleasanton?
Aye.
Tracy? Union City? San Leandro?
Aye.
And Emeryville?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That will bring us to item 12, which is our CEO report. And I will cede the floor to our CEO, Nick Chassett.
Okay. So we did have an executive committee meeting in May, where we provided an update on the voluntary allocation market offer. Our next meeting is next Friday, the 24th. We did hold a marketing, regulatory and legislative meeting on Friday, June 3rd. It was focused on an update on regulatory and legislative matters. We did hold a Finance, Administration, and Procurement Committee meeting as well on June 10th, and the focus there was a review of board and CAC stipends. The only other thing I'd like to note is we do have a new colleague, Matt Chiodo, who's joining the Power Resources team. So welcome, Matt.
Welcome, Matt. Is that the conclusion of your report?
That
Nick?
is the conclusion, yes.
Very good, thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions on the CEO report? Okay, seeing none and seeing how this is an informational item with no deliberation, we're going to move on to our Community Advisory Committee report. So, Chair Eldred, I saw you a second ago. Are you still here? There you are.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Chair. So, Community Advisory Committee report. We had a very long meeting on Monday, and in it, we first said, with great gratitude and excitement for her next chapter, goodbye to Mary Sutter, who served as chair for 2 years and has been on the CAC for 4 years. She is amazing. Thank you, Diane, for showing up and expressing gratitude at that meeting. She really is a rock star. We are excited to be welcoming member Souza to take her place, and will be stepping on as a full member at the next meeting. And that means that we are once again in recruitment for an alternate. So if you know good folks, please send them our way. We also would like to call out that in just over a week, Reverend Chambers, who was a founding member of the CAC, will be receiving a kidney transplant donated. So he is asking for everyone's prayers and love and support, and everything and that goes along with that. So greatest love to him. And then we received an update on things with the two pieces that need to come back to this body. One was a discussion around the stipends. It was brought to the CAC that this is a discussion that happens and that this board will be voting on, I believe, at the next meeting. And so there was full support for a recommendation that the CAC stipends get brought up to parity with the board stipends. And for folks that were not here before, the CAC members get paid a $50 stipend for attending the meetings. Myself and many other of the CAC members not only attend these meetings, but also our city council meetings, meet with constituent groups, report out to the labor councils, meet with faith organizations, do all of the things that we need to do to make sure that we are bringing back information from an informed constituency. We spend a long time and we work really hard, and we have a really hard time retaining low income voices. The concept for having stipends for us was that our members are not elected officials. Many of the folks that we've been trying to recruit anyways work in the evenings. They have to take vacation time to attend. Commuting before was much more challenging. When we return to that, that will again become a challenge. And we have a hard time keeping people on the CAC who have to take time off work to attend, which means that we lose those voices, and we'd really like the voices of the Community Advisory Committee to be valued on par with that of the board. So that is a recommendation that we ask you to consider when you do vote on this next month. And the big part of the meeting was around the budget. So we do have 2 proposals that we'll discuss at that time when that agenda item comes up. But I want you to know that my phone and my email has not stopped ringing. I have been receiving so much feedback from lots of different constituents, but mostly people are upset. They're upset at a lack of public process. They're upset that they didn't know that they could apply for this money. They're upset that there wasn't an RFP. They're upset at a whole bunch of things. And then the other group of people have like really cool ideas with how they could spend that money. So I just want you to know that this decision is something that is out there, and across the board, what I've been hearing is frustration. And that is something that wasn't necessarily at the CAC meeting, but that I have been receiving as chair since then. And so I just want you to know that feedback, because I am talking to these folks. And then we'll actually do our real proposals when we get to the agenda item. And that is all.
Great, thank you, Chair Aldred. Did we, I might have missed it, but I didn't see our normal agenda with the notes from the CAC. Did I miss that?
It will be sent out. It hasn't been sent out yet. The person taking notes had a 4-year-old meltdown.
It is not a problem. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any transmissions from the CAC, but I will trust that you are going to deliver all of their comments at the appropriate times. Colleagues, any questions for our chair of the CAC? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to our big item, which is item 14. This is the fiscal year 22-23 budget, and I will turn it over to staff for a presentation. We saw much of the same information last month. There are some key changes, which I'm sure staff will go over and use our time wisely. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, could you go to the first slide, please? Which should be, there we go. Okay. I think before we jump into the meat of the budget, I do want to speak to the public comment that we received, and I want to share that staff is recommending that we pull the grant item from the consideration of tonight's budget and bring it back for an executive committee discussion of a term sheet. I think one of the comments that I've heard and received is, wanting to know a lot more detail about the use of funds and all the different really frontline federally qualified health clinics up and down our service territory they're going to benefit. That is best dealt with and actually in the grant or term sheet document that lays out exactly where the funds may be used. And so I think bringing that to the executive committee for review and feedback, and then subsequently to the board at some future meeting for consideration then will provide more opportunity for comment and review, and give the board a more informed opportunity to make a decision. So with that, for the purpose of tonight's budget, no need to that would be the modification that staff is recommending. So no need to, I would say, vote on it vote on it. So with that, the other changes are also really important. I would say, really reflective of the conditions that we're facing broadly across the economy with regards to inflation and a lot of volatility in things like commodity prices. So with that, let's go to the next slide, Adrian. Great. So, yeah, when we presented, I'm sorry. Hey, when we presented our last budget, we provided a forecast for a net increase in our surplus position of just around $220 million. That was based on a methodology that was using at the time, forward projection of energy prices. We have, subsequent to our last meeting, PG&E has published their own forecast of energy prices and the Pcia. And so we felt that it was useful to sort of provide a contrast of our approach versus their approach, and really to look at them as sort of a base case A and a base case B. So in this slide, what you see is a net increase in our position or surplus, assuming the PG&E forecast, not the EBCE forecast. It still is providing for a very significant forecast surplus of in excess of $160 million. I'll speak to sort of the differences in the methodology though on the next slide. Next slide, please. So on June 3rd, as I mentioned, PG&E released their 2023 Pcia and rate forecast filing update. In that filing update, they provide their current view of what the 2023 rates and the 2023 Pcia might be. While the specific values they use to forecast what the forward prices are redacted, we are able to develop an implied price curve, which we can then apply to our budget to sort of say, well, this is what we think energy prices are going to be, and thus this is what we think PG&E's rates and PG&E's Pcia are likely to be. And that obviously has a pretty big impact on our headroom. This contrasts to the approach that we take, where we take a variety of prices that are provided through a service that we contract with from Bloomberg, and then we run it through software that we have to provide a probabilistic assessment of what we think the prices are going to be. And that's sort of what we have in these two base cases: the market price benchmark, which is the PG&E forecast, and the Sequant P50, which is our view of the 50% probability of what energy prices are likely to be over the course of the next 12 months. What you see, though, is a pretty big difference. One is $162 million surplus, the other is a $226 million surplus. Can you go to the next slide, Adrian? Okay, can you go back, because I want to sort of just quickly explain, and this might be, if there are questions, this might be just worth jumping in if there are, if folks have questions about this. So one of the big differences between our analysis and the PG&E analysis is PG&E's analysis uses an average of prices in February and March. So we've seen, and this is sort of like the rest of the economy, like your 401k account or gasoline prices, things have gone crazy since February. You think about the price of gasoline, the stock market, there's been a tremendous amount of volatility, and that is definitely volatility we're seeing in the electricity market. So we do have a view that because PG&E's price forecast does include values from sort of before everything went a little bit haywire, it may represent a conservative view of where prices will actually land, and thus it's probably a good number to use when we're thinking about setting a base case for our budget. But if we were to have taken the same methodology that we used when we presented the budget in May and apply it today, that would suggest a surplus of $226 million, which is, I believe, about $10 million more than what we had included in our May budget. Is that clear as mud?
Folks, do you want to jump in and ask any questions now? Because I know I had to have Nick walk me through all of this for about 45 minutes yesterday. So if anyone wants to jump in with specific questions. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. So now, we've sort of established a base case of what we think our surplus is going to be. Now I want to speak to sort of the base case, expenditures that we're building into our budget as a starting point. So first thing we're doing, and this is something we talked about, this is largely unchanged from our last meeting, is increasing the discount from 1% to 3% for Bright Choice, reducing the premium for Renewable 100 from a penny to 3/4 of a cent. It's also that has a total revenue reduction impact of $17.4 million. We're also proposing a one-time $50 bill credit be applied to all of our Care and Fairer customers at some point in the first or second quarter of this coming fiscal year. That has a $6.23 million one-time effect on our budget as a reduction in revenue. We're not changing any of our core assumptions around uncollectibles, We're keeping it at sort of projection of 2%. And we're not drawing from our GASB 62 account, which is a revenue deferral account that we've established in past fiscal years. On the energy cost side, the values, the P50 or the market price benchmark do reflect all of the contracts that we have, as well as our open exposure to energy markets. We are proposing to increase our renewable energy content by 5% this year and next year. So that would push renewable energy in 2022 from 45 to 50%, in 2023 from 49 to 54%. And that would have a projection effect on our carbon free to push us to 68 and 71% carbon free respectively in 2022 and 2023. In terms of our other costs, we are proposing a incremental growth in our staff of an additional 19 FTEs and capital investment in our headquarters up to $7 million, and then almost 150% increase in our local programs budget to, this is the typo, it's 21.1 million, not 20.6. And as I mentioned, staff is recommending that we hold the $15 million grant to a future meeting. Next slide, please. So while we're proposing, upwards of $50 million of incremental investment and benefits to our customers relative to our current base case, that still leaves us with a significant surplus. In the PG, if using the PG&E methodology, it's $162 million surplus. So what we proposed in May, and we're continuing to propose today, is for these funds to be reviewed during our mid-year budget update process to see actually how things have gone. And if things go exactly as forecast, then we are proposing a waterfall as follows. First, a $50 million allocation to working capital needs. Next, a $75 million to reserves. And then the other excess to be split 50-50 between investing in long-term incremental renewable energy or energy storage and a one-time incremental customer bill credit. So under the $162 million surplus, that would be $20 million to each. Next slide, please. So certainly, as I've noted, there are a lot of risk factors here that we would expect to drive results other than the base case. And those risk factors could have varying short-term and long-term financial consequences. One of those risk cases is what if the current forwards are actually low and prices are even higher? The biggest challenge we face there is a working capital challenge. If prices are really, really high, say in September, August and September in particular, even higher than the forwards, our rates are not necessarily going to be set to collect those costs. The PCIA will be set higher than it should be, and then we have to fund those incremental expenses out of our working capital, and we wait until really next year for rates to be reset and the PCIA to be reset to recoup those funds. Another scenario are that these forecasts are too high and prices actually are low. And in a lot of ways, that is actually the worst outcome for EBCE, because what happens there is the hedges that we have don't perform well. The PCIA ends up being set, the current PCIA ends up being set too high, too low, and it ends up that the PCIA next year actually has to be quite a bit higher, which constricts our headroom. And then you actually see PG&E's rates go down. And so, that's the other risk. That is the risk of actually hedging too much and buying too much insurance, is that next year we're actually less competitive relative to PG&E. So, you know, those I would say are sort of the two kind of bookends, and you can speak to sort of exactly what those bookends look like on the next slide, Adrian. So those are reflected in what we view as sort of our P95 and P5 scenarios. So P95 is a very high price environment, and it results in a even stronger surplus, though creates working capital challenges for us. P5 still reflects a fairly strong outcome for us, but does reflect less surplus than we had forecast. Now, the most magnified versions are scenarios where prices are either really lower than we're forecasting, and rates are or they're really higher. So the worst case scenario is that really lower price scenario where we see this rebound in the PCIA, and that is what sort of you have as the P5, P95, where you actually you're losing potentially $83 million. Now, I will say, I think given what we're actually experiencing from an inflationary perspective and just generally, pricing, that is a low probability event, but, nonetheless, it's not an impossible event. And so it's something that we're going to be monitoring very closely over the coming months. And, if indeed we feel like that scenario might be forming, we're going to be checking back in with the board to sort of review some of our assumptions around expenditure plans. Next slide, please. Okay. So this slide here, the gray area reflects kind of the range of your P95. So, that is the range of dollars per megawatt hour that you view as sort of a 95% probability. Outside of that would be, in that 5% probability range. So you'll see that forward prices are, certainly going up, and there is a lot of space between where prices are and what you sort of get in that 95% probability. But there is always the possibility of a black swan type of event where you push yourself beyond those bounds, and we want to be in a position where we're situated to deal with that, and that's why we maintain a strong cash balance. That's why we maintain a large credit facility. Next slide, please. So getting to our operating budget, I sort of spoken to sort of the underlying assumptions here, but under this market price benchmark or PG&E forecast, we are projecting revenues of just under $770 million. Next slide, please. For a frame of reference, I do think it's always helpful to sort of compare, kind of our product discounts compared to those of other CCAs. So for Bright Choice, we have since 2020 offered a 1% discount. Prior to that, it was a 3% discount, but we have persisted in our discount since launch. So we have always offered our Bright Choice customers a discount at all times. In contrast to other CCAs, that has not always been the case. So MCE, while they're offering customers today a very large discount, 12.6%, their rates were 18% and 3% higher than PG&E's in the 2 prior years. Similarly, Clean Power SF, while they've had less volatility, they have found themselves in a position where they've actually been more expensive than PG&E. San Jose Clean Energy, again, for the most part, been less expensive, but this last year they were priced at parity, not at a discount. And then Clean Power Alliance, which is the largest CCA in Southern California, has had some persistently higher rates over the last couple of years.
Nick, I see a hand up from a person. Question?
Yep.
Thank you. This goes back to our value proposition. What has been the experience of Clean Power SF, for example, in losing customers, though, to PG&E? Do you have any sense of that?
I actually don't know what Clean Power SF's experiences have been. I'm more familiar with the Clean Power Alliance's experience, just because I've had more contact with them, and they have seen some higher opt-out rates. Those opt-out rates have been particularly acute for commercial customers. They have not seen significant growth in their opt-out rates, though, from residential customers.
But their prices are significantly higher.
Yep.
It's a very different picture. So I guess I'm looking at Clean Power and us as closer together in terms of the amount of difference between us and PG&E, and wondering what difference it makes. I've just never really felt completely sure about this answer. So, you know, we don't have to address that right now. I just want to let you know it's an area of
I would say the experience has been, let's take MCE. I don't think they have seen significant increases. There have been some that, again, particularly for commercial customers, there's some level of opt-out. I don't think it's a very large level of opt-out. So onto renewable energy, again, we've priced our 100% renewable as a percentage of the bill. While it's a penny higher, that's going to vary based on what the actual rates are. So it's been 8.5, 9.1, 6.7, and now we're proposing 4.8. In contrasting that to MCE, while their current 100% renewable rate is priced at a discount to that of to PG&E's base rate. So their 100% renewable rate is less expensive than PG&E's base rate now. But last year, their 100% renewable rate was priced at a 27% premium to PG&E. So again, I think it's reflective of different CCAs make different choices around sort of volatility of their value proposition. I think the slides here sort of speak for themselves. Again, I think what we find here has been a more consistent focus on maintaining a consistent value proposition as opposed to fluctuating our value proposition relative to our comparable set of other CCAs. Next slide, please. So this is a slide, meant to show, what happens at different levels of funding to our value proposition. So one of the questions that Vice Chair Lopez had asked is, what would it cost for us to get to pricing Renewable 100 at parity to PG&E? And so this is what this analysis reflects. If you were to set our rates for Bright Choice and PG&E sort of to an equitable allocation of savings relative based on the number of customers, you would have, it would cost roughly $18.3 million to set, or our revenues would be reduced by $18.3 million for Renewable 100 and $38.4 million for Bright Choice. So we would need to reduce revenues by, relative to today, by $50 million. So it'd be a $50 million revenue reduction. If you think about that in the context of, if we were to generate a $230 million surplus, and we go through the waterfall that was described, where you say it's 50 million to cash reserve, to working capital, 75 million to cash reserves, to reserves rather, and then the rest is a 50-50 split between renewables and customer discount. In that bigger revenue, bigger surplus scenario, you probably do end up with roughly $50 million for an incremental bill credit to customers. So in that scenario, we might find ourselves in a position where we have sufficient surplus to be able to provide a bill credits to all of our customers, so that they will experience a total bill over the course of the year, if they're a Renewable 100 customer, that was equal to what their bill would have been on the PG&E base case. Okay, next slide, please. So on the cost of energy side, again, we're using sort of our P50 or market price benchmark view of what energy prices are. That drives total energy expense of $523 million. And then we have data management costs, PG&E services, scheduling coordinator. So for a total of $535 million. That is inclusive of higher levels of renewable procurement. Next slide, please. On the overhead front, the biggest drivers here are increases in personnel. So we are adding significant headcount, and kind of some incremental expenditure in marketing and outreach, particularly focused on programs marketing. So as we think about launching more programs, we need to spend more engaging and connecting with our customers to make them aware of these programs that we're going to be running. Next slide, please. Non-operating activity, local development is listed here. I noted that it was a local development budget of 21.3, not 20.6. That is the proposed local development. Again, we're proposing to hold the grant over for a future meeting, and there's a $7 million capital expense related to the building. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. One thing just worth noting here. We do include, if you recall, we did issue a $1 million note to Block Power for our low and moderate income electrification program. We are starting to see some of those revenues start to be paid back. Modest, because the loans don't start paying until 2023, but we're starting to see the revenue benefits of that program design, and hopefully we start to do things like that in the future. Next slide, please. So local development, we are proposing 21.35 million. That is largely in line with our proposal from our last meeting, save for an increase to the community grants that were discussed at our last meeting of, I believe it was $2.5 million or 2.25 million. So it's increasing it from 2.25 to $3 million to be granted over 3 years. Generally, we're proposing to allocate these funds across our areas of emphasis. These are areas of emphasis outlined sort of across, in our early days of our local development planning. And these are the areas that we continue to execute along. Largest area of emphasis is transportation electrification. As noted in public comment, pollution from greenhouse gas pollution and particulate emissions from transportation, represents the single largest source of GHG and air pollution in our communities. And so really focusing on investing there, a real area of emphasis this year. Building electrification is also an area of emphasis. In energy efficiency, while we have no direct expenditures, we are expecting in the next month or so to secure $14 million over the next 3 years to administer energy efficiency incentives. So if you take that, that's roughly $4.5 million a year. That would be on top of our 21.35. For community resilience, it's a small allocation because we are actually working to secure external financing for our community microgrid projects. We do have the community grants, which I referenced, and then there's funds for sponsorships and memberships that are a bit more miscellaneous here. Next slide, please. So going into transportation electrification, real focus on all three categories: light, medium, and heavy duty, focusing on infrastructure and vehicle adoption, looking at ports and partnering with our cities to deliver services like charging as a service. Next slide, please. So here in the infrastructure side, first area is $3 million for our Equitable Charging Hubs program. This is an initiative where we are seeking to build a network to start 10 to 15 and over time more, but a network of electric vehicle fast charging hubs. The $3 million here is actually not set for capital expense. Rather, we're working to secure somewhere in the order of $15 to $20 million of external financing. The $3 million is actually meant to help us cover the first year of debt service on that capital that we want to secure. So, what we expect to do in the coming months is to bring back an agreement for the board to consider to secure that $15 to $20 million of external financing that would allow us to build these 10 to 15 depot fast chargers. So that would result in roughly 200 to 300 chargers themselves, across these 10 to 15 sites. In the medium and heavy duty charging station area, we're seeking $1 million. Again, here we're looking to use these funds to leverage external capital, not just to provide grants, but to make investments in medium and heavy duty fleet charging. So there's a lot of discussion when you're in the electrification space around the need to electrify, particularly drayage. Drayage is the type of trucking that picks up at the port and goes to the logistics centers, across the communities we serve. These are some of the most polluting diesel trucks out there. We want to electrify them. We also want to invest in the necessary charging infrastructure to ensure that those trucks can be electric. And then finally, is our municipal fleet charging as a service project. This is a project we're working on with all of our member cities to actually support your efforts to electrify your fleets. This is where we're providing capital to actually own and operate chargers for your electric vehicles. This is going to remove a barrier to city adoption of electrification, vehicle electrification, because it allows you to not have to take on the responsibility of finding the funds to pay for the chargers. EBCE will pay for those chargers, and we will charge you as a service to charge your vehicles. We also have $750,000 of ongoing technical assistance planned. Big chunk of it focused on helping medium and heavy duty fleet operators better understand the opportunity to electrify their trucks. Next slide, please. Mike Cannon.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. Real quickly on the charges that we're going to be providing to residents living near multifamily properties, what would be the charge for them to utilize those facilities?
I think that is a very open question. These are going to be public chargers, so these are not going to be in buildings. These are going to be, chargers in parking lots and parking garages that are going to be, fully publicly accessible. I think we want to think about how do we price these so that it's attractive to customers, but also reflecting that we have to, be able to generate some revenue to be able to, cover the costs of the infrastructure deployment. That is going to be sort of one of the phases of this project, is going through a pricing exercise, thinking about, do you want to offer a low cost in the beginning to encourage vehicle adoption and then raise your prices over time to reflect your cost of service? Do you want to provide incremental discounts to your care and fair customers or to municipal fleets? And it's not going to be static. We're not going to price in one way and say, this is always the way we price. We're going to kind of go through a process, at least annually, if not more often, to think about what the right way to price is going to be.
Thank you, Nick.
So then on the vehicle adoption side, Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you very much. And just a comment on that, I think that is wise, that strategy is to kind of play it by ear. And I know when we did the bus rapid transit rollout, we did do the first 6 months for free for bus ridership to get people to have it be a habit. So, definitely, looking at pricing strategies and what can incentivize either municipalities to sign an MOU or have, community members decide to, expend quite a bit of money actually on electric vehicles because they know they can compensate that with perhaps lower charging rates, are wise things to look at. I think that, going into EV charging stations, statically or, at a price that would be priced to market with maybe some of the private sector entities and benchmarking ourselves to that would probably not be wise, because we would want to show the value proposition for being in East Bay community energy and, really, I would say, negate any naysaying that may be coming from communities as to whether we should go into RFPs instead, which is actually the case in my community by one council member. So thank you very much.
So next are, investments in mobility itself. So previously we were talking about the charging infrastructure, but you have to have both charging and vehicles. And so we do want to make, meaningful investments in vehicles. So one of those is to put some money into supporting lowering the cost and improving the experience of light duty or passenger electric vehicle adoption, focusing on low and moderate income consumers. This is a program that we don't have specifically designed yet, but we will be bringing a program back to the board for consideration. An example might be helping rideshare drivers adopt electric vehicles by taking our $2 million and splitting it partially in incentives and partially as low interest loans to help reduce the cost of adoption of an electric vehicle relative to an internal combustion vehicle. The next is a similar type of program. We're seeking to leverage $2 million to help reduce barriers and the cost of adopting medium and heavy duty trucking. So this could be form a partnership with a medium and heavy duty fleet operator to provide low interest capital to reduce the cost of buying an electric drayage truck or a fleet of electric drayage trucks. And again, here the idea is we want to take our $2 million and create leverage to attract more external capital such that 2 million turns into $8 million in new drayage investment being made. And then last is a $2 million commitment to invest in micromobility. So not just passenger vehicles, cars and trucks, but other solutions. Those could be electric bikes. Those could be electric scooters. Again, here we actually have started to talk to the MTC about partnering with them in some regional work they're doing around electric bike hubs to be able to leverage that and offer folks across the East Bay who currently don't have access to shared electric e-bikes that access. Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, I'm interested in, as we develop our BART stations in many of our cities, if we are looking at that as an opportunity to provide this so that we can have people have access to transit for that last mile. We're very concerned in Berkeley, people are going to be circling the station and then just giving up and driving if we don't do this. So is that part, when you say local transit agencies, I'm assuming you're including a collaboration between BART and AC Transit, potentially? Or
yes, yeah, I don't think we have a specific program design in mind yet. So the initial conversations we've have been with MTC, because MTC, from what we understand, MTC is actually working closely with BART already, thinking about electric vehicle charging, electric bicycle networks.
And I would also ask that you look at working with ACT directly, but I don't know if you can do that. So I just don't know how this relationship works, but because we're on the brink of this development, it's of particular interest.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, I think we don't have a specific program design in mind at this time. So.
I see a hand from Chair Eldred.
Thank you. That is really exciting to hear. I also sit on the Policy Advisory Council for MTC and on the Equity and Access Subcommittee. And I will say one of the things that we hear most often to support a bit of what Member Harrison is saying is not only the last mile, but especially in places like our unincorporated county, the last like 10 miles. And for some folks, the last 30 miles who are commuting in from somewhere. So really looking at ways to, like, I'm really pleased about the creative way you're approaching this. And then also really looking not only at last mile solutions, but like last 5 and 10 mile solutions for places that aren't serviced very well. It's really exciting that you're doing that.
Great, thank you, Anna Olivia. Let's keep our comments right now to clarifying questions. So, and then we'll, when Nick's
next slide, please.
Public comment, and then we'll do board discussion.
Community resilience. This is our community microgrids program. This is a program where we are working with each one of our member cities to deploy solar and storage on critical municipal facilities. The funds we're asking for here are more about supporting the work because we are going to be leveraging, significant external capital to be able to build, own, and operate these solar and storage facilities. We are, hopefully going to be issuing the first RFO for the first phase of projects here very soon. Next slide, please. So energy efficiency, I spoke to that. We are hopeful in the next month that we're going to get CPUC approval for a $13.5 million 3-year energy efficiency program. We're really excited about that. Next slide, please. So in building electrification, extending the work we're doing with Block Power and putting funds aside to potentially scale that program, really continuing to focus on clean cooking. Cooking with natural gas is a persistent source of indoor air quality challenges. And so we want to really invest in ways to give folks alternatives but really also focus on awareness. There's a major awareness challenge that we have around cooking with natural gas, and the sort of view that that's still a superior way to cook. And then we do have a $2 million credit enhancement that we do want to offer to cities for things like your municipal electrification. So one example, we are working with the city of Piedmont that is looking to electrify their municipal pool to provide some of these funds as a low interest loan to help cover the differential cost between gas and electric. Piedmont would then pay EBCE back over time. Next slide, please. And we are proposing community grants, $3 million over 3 years, focused on sort of our core focus areas. We are also proposing that we would work closely with the CAC to determine the funding priorities and the grant making strategy and process here. Next slide, please. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Nick. Board, are there any clarifying questions on the budget presentation? Member Marquez.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the thorough presentation and the update, Nick. My only question at this time is, there's mention of 19 of full-time equivalent employees. Can you give us a sense of what positions you're going to be recruiting for?
Yeah, it's pretty broad across the organization, from more program staff. So staff to work on energy efficiency program implementation, for instance. So, we're actually getting money from the CPUC to administer the $13.5 million. So we need to hire somebody to help administer and do all of the documentation. We're continuing to enhance our procurement team and enhance those capabilities and build more resiliency within that team. We're bringing on a San Joaquin outreach coordinator as another example. So as we think about potential expansion in the city of Stockton and also just wanting to expand our reach in the city of Tracy, hiring somebody who is really focused on going to events in Tracy and hopefully Stockton. That's another position. We're in the marketing area. We are bringing on somebody to work on brand and communications. Right now, we rely on external consultants to do that. In the technology analytics area, it's bringing on another Salesforce administrator and bringing on another staff person to help run our quantitative models, really focus on things like rates and revenue. So that's an example. We also are seeking to hire an office manager and a full-time IT person. As we move into a new building, we're going to need to have our own IT capabilities and not really be reliant on external IT, as an example. So.
Will there be any opportunities for fellows, interns, any young people maybe in college or high school students?
So for high school students, one of the challenges we've had there is just some of the sort of documentation when having someone under the age of 18. I think when we think about interns, absolutely. I think with fellows, I'm not sure that I think what we've done so far is we've converted our fellows into full-time staff. So the jobs that we have actually here are coordinators. We have entry level, just out of college. I think we have at least 3 or 4 positions that are well suited for just recent college graduates or just folks with 1 or fewer years of work experience, shall we say. So not necessarily even college graduates, just folks that don't have a lot of work experience. And for interns, we don't actually, from a budgeting perspective, because you typically bring interns on, though we do pay our interns, the expense is pretty low and we don't have a lot of them. So we don't kind of explicitly view that as an incremental line item that just sort of is in the wash of our total personnel expense.
Okay. In the innovation grants right now, it's proposed $1 million for the next 3 years, and there will be an RFP process.
We don't have a specific proposal for how many dollars there would be. So is it $1 million over 3 years? Is it $2 million, 500? Like, that's actually something we would want to sort of engage with the CAC around. I think the thought there is we want to really give the CAC the opportunity to come up with a set of proposals and parameters and then bring that back to the board for board consideration and approval. And once you can, so approve the grant making parameters and strategy, then we would go and execute.
Okay, and what is the proposed check-in based on what revenues actually come in and what we can implement? You had mentioned it all.
So we typically do in January. It's our, certainly if results were significantly out of line with our expectations, we would check in before then, but January would typically be when we would provide that check-in.
Okay, and then my last question is with respect to cooking, the clean cooking with induction. Have we considered offering grants? I think one of the biggest pushbacks is with our monolingual community in terms of how they prefer to cook. So have we thought about reaching faith-based community, nonprofits, and potentially providing stipends? I think we could do like YouTube videos, but I think we really need to meet people where they're at. I find that being the biggest pushback.
Yeah, and I think that's actually very much sort of in line with our strategy. So in language, a big area of our increase in marketing spend is actually focused on induction communication. And so it's as much about just sort of communicating to folks, through various channels and in multiple languages in compelling ways, not just, an ad. It's actually producing videos, and, we've produced a number of cooking videos, and it's incredible, like 40,000 YouTube views of cooking videos we've produced relative to like our other videos that get 200 views. People like cooking. And so doing those in, culturally and language appropriate ways so we can meet our customers, absolutely part of the plan. We do have technical assistance dollars focused on restaurants, and in those restaurants, it really is focused on smaller restaurants, not, big chains, but it's how do we actually help, individual, owners of a single restaurant think about induction. So.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Member Kalb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nick, for this. I'm excited to see some real spending on the vehicle electrification, and especially some of the work on medium and heavy duty vehicles, both for charging and for essentially replacing or helping those who need to replace them. And I'm hoping we can up our game in that area as years go forward. And I do realize a big part of that is the Port of Oakland, which is Oakland. And our EBCE is not just Oakland, of course, but so I'm being a little parochial here, but the Port of Oakland is such a major emitter, or the things that happen at the Port of Oakland are such major emitters of particulate matter and other pollutants due to the activity there. And so more that we could do to push the port or to help the port do better, I think that benefits all of us climate-wise and beyond. So on the community innovation or community energy innovation grants, whatever we're calling them, while I'm not proposing a specific way RFP details here or anything like that, I'm just sharing some.
Dan, I'm sorry, can I stop you for a second? We're still in clarifying questions. So if you have a proposal, can you hold it for a second?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Sure.
It is our duty as officials to hear the public before you you share your proposal, and your proposal may change based on what you hear. So I will call on you first when we get to deliberation. And at this time, I will recognize Member Harrison.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Nick, if we, is your intention as we vote on this that we are agreeing to some form of the grant to the hospital, or that you will come back with more thoughts about that? I want to know how specific.
The grant is not would not be in the
I understand, but you've said you're going to go ahead and work up a term sheet. I don't want to end up 6 months down the road with that so far developed that there's no option. So I'm curious about what our vote is going to mean. And maybe this is more of a question for Inder. Are we saying we're going to consider all that later, including whether we think this is a good idea, or are we in some way saying we think this is the good idea? I just need to understand.
I don't think that it's not included in the budget, so it would not be. This vote does not one way speak to it one way or the other.
Okay. Okay, is that Ms. Khalsa? Do you agree with that?
That's correct. This is just the vote on the budget would not, you can give direction to Nick with respect to future items, but it's not included in the budget.
Okay, and would it be appropriate to do that at the end of after public comment, or are we going to be thinking about that in some future date? Madam Chair, maybe that's a question for you.
I would suggest that we hear public comment and include that as part of our deliberations, but the budget vote as proposed by staff sounds like it is completely exclusive of any consideration of the grant.
Okay, thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to ask our clerk if we have received any speaker cards, any electronic comment that needs to be read into the record. Otherwise, please recognize attendees with their hands raised for 1.5 minutes on this item.
Great, thank you. I will recognize Audrey Ichinose. Audrey Ichinose, recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Okay. Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance and the California Alliance for Community Energy. I just like to repeat a few points I made earlier, and that is about our opposition to the $15 million grant to Children's Hospital. I really appreciate Ms. Harrison's clarification of where we stand with the decision. Obviously, EBCE can do much more good by adhering to its mission. You know, listening to all of the wonderful things proposed for the local development programs, it strikes me that how much more can be achieved with $15 million more. So the only proviso is that we not lose sight of our obligations to low-income communities of color. Yeah, that's all I wanted to emphasize. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Jessica Tovar, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I appreciate that you are pulling the $15 million gift to UCSF for us to talk about later in an open forum and make sure that all stakeholders weigh in. I want to also highlight that the letter that I submitted on behalf of East Bay Clean Power Alliance has several signatories. And we did receive a last-minute one from the California Nurses Association, who are in opposition of giving this gift to UCSF. I also want to emphasize that the whole point of advocating for a local community choice program was to invest back into the community that EBCE serves. And I want to remind you of your commitment, but also uplift that we need to start funding access for the most lowest income communities of color, frontline communities, environmental justice communities, so that they can benefit also from this clean energy transition. One of the things that I've learned is that many communities within your territory don't qualify as disadvantaged communities under Cal Enviro Screen. This is a great opportunity for East Bay Community Energy to uplift the communities within its territory. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. Al Weinrub, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Al Weinrub, the coordinator of the statewide California Alliance for Community Energy. Many of you know me from my past participation, part of the effort that created East Bay Community Energy in the first place, going back to 2016, 2015. Our alliance, our statewide alliance, exists for the purpose of really setting standards of behavior for community choice energy agencies and energy programs, really focusing them on local development of energy resources for the economic, environmental, and social justice benefits of our communities. This proposal is very distressing. You know, they have, it came out of nowhere, wasn't run by the Community Advisory Committee. There was a dog and pony show to the board members before the community ever heard of it. It was also a backdoor inside kind of deal. You know, you heard from the community very strongly how it feels. The main point here is that if something really smells like corruption, if it looks like corruption, if it sounds like corruption, and it has the impact of corruption, that's what we call corruption. And we don't need it from East Bay Community Energy. We get enough of it from PG&E. Thank you.
Thank you. Amos White, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. I spoke previously to the item in the first set. I was unclear in terms of order, whether or not this would be raised again or the public would have access, but I think my comments have been registered. Thank you again for considering this and in allowing the public further input on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tom Kelly, recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. So based on all the public comments and to submitted and also to the CAC, there are basically 3 items that people want to see. They want to see significantly improved GHG reductions from EBCE electricity. They want to see meaningful discounts for customers and to actually see the benefits and successes of the expenditures associated with the local development business plan. So on the GHG issue, our GHGs are 3.5 times worse than PG&E, and yet our JPA requires us to be less than PG&E. Our rates are high and the quality of our power is low, and we have to fix that balance. One of the issues there is that we buy renewables out of state. The electricity goes to customers in other states, and then we paper over the system power that we buy in California to deliver to the California grid. This surplus that we're anticipating has to eliminate that problem. Finally, I'd like to ask that for the board and all the rest of us, that we get an in-depth report on the successes so far on the local development business plan. I've tried to research it and I see that there's some work being done, but how many people have we served? What are the outcomes? How have people benefited? And please don't let that go, because it's important for a long-term discussion on what that development plan actually does for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Johnson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes. Robert Johnson, if you could please unmute yourself. Come back to Robert Johnson. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. These are budget items. You know my feelings about the IPR report of 2020 October. At this point, it was quite an odd report in that I think I myself and all of us, I think, have gone through a lot of learning process from such a report and what to expect in the future of solar and storage versus fossil fuel use. Thanks. It's been a learning process. Good luck how we can work on this issue into 2023 and into the next decade. You're starting to, you mentioned the donating money to the hospital. It was also mentioned micro mobility plans you want to be involved with and other such programs. So EBC, you're trying to branch out into community efforts. You have to be wary and wise. Is it possible that the funding for the hospital can come from different sources? The grant, the donations. How can that be from different sources within the EBCE? Is that possible? And micromobility issues, that involves a lot of data collection ideas. You have to be wary. You have to be very aware of the open public policies and accountability practices that have to go with the future of this micro mobility issues. It's vital to the ideas of equity that what we're trying to work on. Good luck to ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Johnson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes. We are unable to, I'm not sure if you are speaking.
Try again. Hold on.
Robert Johnson, you're recognized for 1.5 minutes. You seem to have some difficulty hearing you. If you could submit your comment as a written public comment on our EBCE website, that'd be greatly appreciated.
And Mr. Johnson, if you could do that, our clerk will forward that to the board as we're in our deliberations. So thank you. Adrian, does that conclude our list of public speakers?
Yes, that concludes our list of public speakers.
Thank you. We will close public comment at this time. I'd like to begin with Member Kalb, who I so rudely interrupted, and then we'll go to Chair of the CAC, Chair Eldred, and then anyone else.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not feel rudely interrupted at all. So not at all whatsoever. So thank you very much. So I just wanted to, it's a lot of information in the budget, and thank the staff and everybody for putting it together. Like I said before, I'm thrilled that we are trying to up our game somewhat in the medium and heavy duty vehicle area, and there's a lot more to do in that area, no doubt, especially throughout our jurisdiction, but even particularly in and around the Port of Oakland. I did want to make a comment and a suggestion on the community innovation grants, or the community energy innovation grants. I'm not sure what they're called exactly. I do hope that when we get into details later in terms of how what the RFP looks like, or how the decision-making process goes forward, anything that, not anything, but things that are help with kind of growing the clean energy, green jobs workforce when it comes to climate and clean energy would be a very positive suggestion for recipients. Even more so, groups that are working on and successfully have the opportunity to work on electrification and reduced emissions in the medium and heavy duty sector. That would be great. Whatever we could do to help lower income people be a bigger part of the clean energy solution. I know there are a whole range of organizations that can be part of this effort. And I think when grants are given out, or when the process is underway to select grantees or to invite grantees to submit, I always find it more productive to give fewer grants in larger amounts than a whole bunch of very tiny grants. So I'm not making any motion in this regard about what I just said, but I'm just sharing publicly my thoughts about the ultimate process that would happen going forward. I do want to make one proposal, and I did discuss this with Nick earlier this week, and he says, well, he can speak for himself, but it does seem doable here. I would like us to increase the grant dollar amount pot from $3 million over 3 years to $4.2 million over 3 years, which is $1.4 million per year on the average. And he indicated that that is doable, both in terms of the budget and in terms of staff capacity, but I'll let him answer that himself. But I'd like us to make an amendment today to up that from 3 to 4.2 million. Yeah, that's the only amendment I'm recommending. Thank you.
Do you want to make that a motion, Dan, so that there's one on the table? It's to pass the budget with that amendment.
Sure, I'm happy to pass the budget as presented with that one amendment, increasing the community grant pot from 3 to 4.2 million. course, there may be other amendments that people are considering that I'm happy to consider as well, of course, but I'll happy to make that motion right now.
Great, thank you. And I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, is that inclusive of cutting the $15 million grant out of this process?
Yes, that is to be removed out of today's budget vote, correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Dan. And,
Next up, Piedmont seconds.
Very good. We have a motion from Member Kalb on the table and a second from the member from Piedmont. And now I will turn it over to Chair Eldred from the CAC.
This is just to provide feedback from the CAC on this item, and then I'll lower my hand and re-enter the queue with my own questions. So the CAC voted to support staff's recommendation. Our first request was that the $15 million be pulled for further consideration. So we'd like to thank staff for bringing that to this body as a recommendation. And then further, we wanted to support the rest of the budget and provide feedback that, and also Member Kalb's recommendation, that's great. But to say that we would like to approve the budget as proposed without the children's grant, and then also to provide direction to staff that our focus is increasing local renewable energy content, reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the Bright Choice product, and reducing cost to our customers, as well as strong support for ensuring that Renewable 100 be on cost parity for residential and at least small commercial accounts. That's all.
Thank you, Chair Eldred. I think all of those requests can be considered when we get to our midpoint check-in and see actually how much we're in for in terms of our total budget. Next up, we have Member Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to, I guess, put in a bookmark that after the vote on the budget, I'd like to make a motion with direction regarding the $15 million grant that's contemplated. So I understand that's not part of the budget, but we have heard from council that we can provide direction on that in this meeting. So I would like to have the opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's come back to that. Member Lopez, excuse me, Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very good budget. I'm very happy. Overall, I think it's fairly inclusive. A lot of the elements that we want to see. It is expanding the organization and its capacity, and getting ready for us to take in more load while still being innovative and spreading the wealth, so to speak, to various jurisdictions. And I think, I want to just thank all of the EBC staff that have worked on the budget, all the different numbers. I know there's people behind that really put in a lot of time and think about it, and have spreadsheets built around every single number that is proposed to us. And so I wanted to thank the whole team for your work. So I'm supportive and will be voting in favor, including with the amendment from Member Kalb. I was just wondering, Member Kalb, if you could, if Chair, through you, if I can address Member Kalb, if you could just clarify the number, why the 1.2 rather than just making it like a full 5 million, for example. Chair, is that okay? Ask that question of him.
It is absolutely fine. Please go ahead, Member Kalb.
Thank you. Through the chair. As you might recall, it originally was 2.25 million. We had a discussion, and I recommended a month ago to come back to 3 million. And then after talking with folks, including with Nick, but others in the community, a few other people, we realized that we could go to 4.2 and still be within money that we have available with the budget and within the staff capacity to administer it. And so that was a number that I landed at. There's no magic number. If someone wants to say 4.35 or whatever, that's fine. But I'm just recommending 4.2 as a good solid number that we can do. We can accomplish that.
Mm-hmm. Was there the opportunity just to go to an even 5 million?
You'd have to ask staff about that. you know, or 4.2, 4.4, 4.5. I don't think 5 was at that same possibility, but maybe 4.3 or 4 was. I don't know.
So I guess the question then would be for our CEO.
Nick, are you able to respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, at some point, when we think about administering multiple grants over multiple years, you know, there's a threshold at which it becomes, you know, an increasing administrative burden for the agency. And so when Director Kalb made the inquiry and asked about the increase beyond 3, you know, the focus was around 4. So 4.2 versus 4 is not a significant amount. I think when you start to go significantly above that, I do think that it creates an increasing level of administrative burden for us. So, you know, certainly if you think about our overall budget, an additional $800,000 is not, it's in and of itself problematic. I think it's more about organizational costs for what is still a pretty small organization.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I support the motion, including the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Member Monroe from Livermore.
So I also support the budget, and I really appreciate Vice Chair Lopez's extensive thank yous. They are certainly well-deserved. You know, it's one of those ditto moments, so ditto. Livermore appreciates this. We're moving to opt up to our municipal accounts, and so this will certainly make it an easier sell as we go forward. The amendment sounds fine. I just thought the 4.2 was because it was divisible by 3. That, you know, that works easily. So, you know, but what do I know? I wanted to talk a little bit about how you divide up. I mean, one of the things this whole discussion of what do you do with extra money has made me think long and hard about is how do you make those decisions? And so I've heard about the Port of Oakland. And by the way, Member Kalb, I appreciate you're saying it's a parochial issue, but speaking as someone who lives in Livermore and gets some of that air pollution coming my way, you know, it's like a smoking section in, you know, what used to be smoking sections in restaurants. What starts in the Port of Oakland doesn't stay there, although it has specific effects there that are you know, noted more locally than not. So, I mean, there's particular areas we can focus on. There is I appreciated the thought about the large grants versus the small grants, and the difference that those two that small amounts of money do versus large amounts of money. And I also appreciated the thoughts about, which I'm not sure they were articulated precisely, but short-term value, long-term value, medium-term value, and then which communities get affected. I'm wondering if, as we go forward, we can have some of those explicitly laid out. My feelings in this case, you know, as I thought about it, is that, I was making some implicit assumptions that I wasn't even aware of until they were brought out. And it would be really helpful to me in thinking about about the budget and about grants and how to think about those, to have those assumptions made as explicit as possible. So that's what I've got. And yeah, thank you very much. And I support.
Thank you, Member Monroe. Member Cox.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify again what our Director Kopp is proposing, because I'm getting a little, I just want to make sure I'm hearing it right. Before we vote, if that could be done at that time.
Sure. Is this in regards to the community grants or the whole motion, Member Cox?
It was just regarding the amendment to the community grants. Before we vote on it, I just want to make sure we get that clarified. And then I have some other points to make too. So I wanted to also ask about for the transportation electrification objectives that are outlined in the budget. And this would probably be something that I really appreciate the entire EBCE to put together this whole detailed budget and a lot of the objectives, because it kind of gives a little more clarity on where the money is going to be spent. I wanted to understand, based on the transportation electrification, is that based on some things that East Bay Community Energy has gone out and got an RFP on and are willing to then implement some of these different public charging stations and to be able to charge as a charging as a service component? I was just kind of understanding how did they arrive at being able to achieve that, or is that what they are looking to do going forward into establishing charging stations?
Yes. So for the public charging stations, we are in the midst of a solicitation for both financing and deployment capabilities. So, I referenced a phase of wanting to build kind of the first phase of seeking to build somewhere in the 10 to 15 station range. So we are in the midst of a solicitation for all the necessary sort of financial and technical capabilities to be able to provide that service. For the municipal charging as a service, we are evaluating kind of the best deployment model, whether we want to use EBCE funds or third-party funds. And but when we end up making a determination as to sort of that, there will be a process to select one or more vendors there. And I think we're trying to better understand sort of what the scope of work there's going to be. Does that fit into the capabilities that we're trying to secure from our public fast charging partner, or is it a wholly different set of capabilities that we have to go and solicit bids for?
Okay, and so your one of your first initiatives would be to deploy it into renters and low income or communities of disadvantaged communities. Is that what I'm understanding for your first?
So the first initiative is public fast charging stations that are going to be sited on property that is municipally owned. So municipal parking lots and garages, with certainly an emphasis on siting them adjacent to high densities of multifamily housing.
Okay, that'd be kind of your criteria of location to place it there.
And
okay.
the rationale with multifamily housing specifically is, unlike single family homes that typically have parking and thus ability to charge at home, multifamily housing very often does not have either dedicated parking, or if there's dedicated parking, is not owned by the resident. And so there's very limited ability to invest in charging for a vehicle. So you end up in a situation where if you live in multifamily, your ability to charge at home overnight is significantly diminished relative to single family. And because we have so many of our residents who live in multifamily, that becomes a huge barrier to adoption.
Right. I agree. That helps me understand that aspect of it. I did want to share with you that the County of Santa Clara Board of Supervisors, and this could be something that could be a tag team to talk with Alameda County Board of Supervisors. In Santa Clara, this was done back on May the 3rd, 2022, that there was a resolution to reduce the electrical vehicle charging user fees that were previously implemented with the county. And basically the user fees were reduced. And so, for example, the first 4 hours were reduced down to 0.20 cents kilowatt while charging. And if you went up to the 5th hour, then it kind of dropped off, or it reduced it to even more of a reduction. So I just thought I could share that, and I could provide more information on that to the board chair and to our president, Nick, CEO, more information about that. But I think it would be kind of helpful to see what other counties are doing as well, and the partnership to be able to carry out some special initiatives and covering it with some other special grants and things that your staff is probably working on or looking to seek more to help in this increasing the adoption of more electrical vehicles and stations or hybrids thereof. So happy to share some more of that information on there. And I know for the County of Santa Clara, they do use ChargePoint, which is one of the largest makers of charging stations and ports. So, but just some information just to pass along to you as well.
Great, thank you, Member Cox. I believe you have an outstanding question to Member Cowell, but I can try to answer it briefly and let me know if you need further details. But there was a previous suggestion to spend $3 million over 3 years for the community grants, and Councilmember Cowell is suggesting that we up that to $4.2 million over 3 years. So that's the change in the figure.
Okay, and this is all relating to the local development funds, correct?
To the community grants.
To yes. The community grants, okay.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Narum.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for a comprehensive but understandable budget presentation. It's pretty complicated, but I think you distilled it down well. I'm going to be pleased to support this budget. I think there's a lot of innovative components to it, not to mention electrifying the drayage trucks, which certainly affect the Tri-Valley as they head over to the warehouse distribution centers. The microtransportation, we certainly have, I think, we could offer a great use for that, from the BART station down to our ACE train station, where we have riders that come into the BART and then want to get down there. And I think they're running buses, and I don't know how all they get there, but that could be a good opportunity. And then I wanted to comment on the induction cooking. So for cities, perhaps many of us that have eliminated natural gas in new construction, it would seem like there's an opportunity to promote the induction cooking with the Builders Association. And, you know, if we could get a foothold in some of these new developments, it might really create a buzz about the induction cooking and make people want to be interested in pursuing it or implementing it in their home. So again, I'm happy to support this budget, and I really feel like it's pretty comprehensive and will benefit all of our cities here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Member Narum. Member Marquez.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Chair? Thanks. Trying to get away from a very unruly dog at this time, so I apologize. If it's not kids, it's an animal. It's always—
I'm being chased around by bugs that are the size of my head. So if I go off screen, that's where I am.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I just wanted to thank staff for their hard work. I know it's been very difficult to get to this point. A lot of sweat and tears to run these calculations and provide us with this update. I also want to thank the community. It's been really touching to hear all the comments, you know, the variation of perspectives. And also just want to say, I think I can only speak for myself, but I learned a lot through this process and the importance of slowing down and being more transparent. So I have a commitment to approach things differently moving forward. But ultimately, I'm really pleased that our CEO has decided to slow things down and take off the $15 million grant off the table at this time. I think we'll just focus on myself. I want to say general comments, but I can't speak for others. But the asthma thing is near to my heart as well. But also hearing the concerns, I do agree wholeheartedly that we need to focus on transparency and a public process. So I am pleased that we'll be adopting this budget tonight with that item removed. Also pleased with the amended motion to increase the community innovation grants. And also just want to echo the comments made by Mr. Tom Kelly. I do feel it's important that we get an update on the local development plan. I want to see metrics as well as percentages. Where are we at with implementing these projects? The budget is amazing in terms of numbers, but there's a lot of us that also learn visually. So I would like to see pie charts, percentages, just to get a better understanding of the different categories in terms of how we're allocating our revenues and expenses. I also want to echo the comments with respect to ensuring that low-income communities are getting their full service and taking advantage of all of these financial resources, and also echo some of the comments made by Jessica Tovar with respect to seeing how we can close the gap for communities specifically. I know Hayward is one of them that doesn't, it's not eligible for some of these low-income programming just based off you know, whatever data they're using to make those calculations, but really trying to get money back to the people and having the greatest impact as possible. And also want to thank the CAC for all of their hard work and really admire and respect the chair for fielding all those calls and emails. We really appreciate and value your service to this body. So I'm happy to support the motion, and thank you, Chair, for your great work on this as well.
Thank you, Member Marquez. And in my former life as a TV writer, I appreciate your segue to the next speaker, which is Chair Eldred.
Thank you, Chair. I really do want to, my other screen is here. So, you know, the camera is here, but my screen is there. Apologies for being sideways. We do want to express extreme gratitude for the number of ways that staff is exploring partnering with other agencies whose jurisdictions include our service territories. There's some really creative looks in there, and we look forward to staff bringing back some of those components that they were talking about. It's really exciting. We also would like to recognize that JP has been working hard on those equity metrics that were just mentioned, and had planned on doing a report to us, but has, in actually doing it, has run into some stuff that deserves some further exploration, and we do really look forward to seeing those. And really looking at the ways that equity is being realized in EBCE's project and program choices. Really specifically, we want to see equity-centered programs and projects that are subsidized for low-income communities, communities with specific energy-related needs or vulnerabilities, and addressing avoiding adding more inputs into historically marginalized communities and BIPOC communities and communities that don't qualify for other subsidies and support. Like, we want to stop doing more harm, right? I don't know if I said that very well. We have done some really great small pilot projects. Like this group, our staff has led some really innovative work, and we'd love to see access to those programs expanded. Things like the LMI Electrification program, helping community groups with local microgrids and more medical baseline batteries subsidized for low-income folks. So I just want to recognize the creativity that our staff has put forward, and we'd really like to see some of these programs expanded. That's all.
Thank you, Chair Eldred. So we have a motion on the table, and we have a second. I just want to put in a few comments and thank staff. And really just highlight how fantastic our staff is. I learn this more and more as I go out into the world, as COVID is calming down, and I've been able to attend conferences and network with people who are also working in energy. And the number one question I get asked is, do you know JP Ross? Because he's worked everywhere and he knows everyone and he's done everything. And I'm only just embarrassing JP because his camera's off. But you know, I get the same questions about other members of staff, Nick included. we have a really high level of competency at this organization. There is a reason why our budget projections look the way they do. It's because, you know, and not to disregard any board policies that we've set forth to put ourselves on really solid footing financially, but it is incredible where we've come from the inception of this idea from activists, and I'll give credit where it is due to Al and Jessica, who came to see me in my office years and years ago and told me what a CAC was, because I didn't know. But you know, we've come a very, very long way, and so many people, Inder included, has had to have the same education on energy as I've had to have, and we all know it's not easy, and our staff, they do a great job, and they, when they give us these presentations, they make it look easy when it is not. I also just wanted to talk about, you know, in general, the balance of the programs that we have versus our ability to make one-time investments, and just being mindful of staff's capacity to run the really amazing, terrific programs that we already have on the table. And I think it's our duty as the board to help evangelize about the great work that we do, especially the transportation electrification, because what I heard in the public comment tonight, maybe in part, even from other elected officials, they don't seem to understand the breadth and depth of what we are doing, specifically for our medium and heavy load transportation electrification. That is work that we are doing, that we are partnering with pilots on, and in every way we are leveraging other people's money to help get things done in a very careful way. So again, those are my comments. Kudos to the board, to staff, to the CAC, to everyone involved in the success of our work at East Bay Community Energy. And with that, I will ask our clerk to please call the roll, and then we'll have a brief discussion on the Children's Hospital grant.
Great, thank you very much. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany.
With enthusiasm, yes.
Thank you. Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin. Dublin. Fremont.
Aye.
Oh. Yes, thank you. Yes. Fremont.
Yes.
Thank you. Hayward.
Aye.
All right. Livermore.
Yes.
Newark. Newark. Oakland.
Yes.
Oakland is aye.
Oakland, aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Piedmont. Piedmont. Pleasanton.
Aye.
Thank you. Tracy. Union City. San Leandro. Oh, thank you. Can you give your vote, please?
Aye.
Thank you. San Leandro, yes, and Equitable.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Aye, and
you.
I just got a text. Did you get Newark was aye?
No, I did not get that. Thank you very much. I am changing that to yes, and the motion passes.
Very good. Are there any other votes that you need to clarify, Adrienne?
No, I do not think so. Piedmont, is Piedmont here?
Yes, Piedmont is here. Jen?
Yeah, aye.
Thank you. And Tracy is not here. Yes, the motion passes.
Very good, thank you. All right, so that'll bring us back to the question of direction. What staff has on the table, or what they've suggested, is that they bring back a term sheet to the executive committee. That would be in our July meeting, and then this would have to come back to the whole board. It could come as early as September if that's ready, but Nick, do you have an idea of when that would be?
I think we would bring a term sheet for discussion and review to the executive committee all in July, and then from there take feedback, and then the executive committee would make a recommendation for how to proceed at the September meeting as an informational item or an action item. That would really be something we would seek the executive committee to direct us around.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to appreciate staff for adding some process to this and transparency for public meetings, because I think it would answer questions for the community and for the board as well. So with that, I will go back to the board. Member Cox, your hand is raised. All right, she might have stepped away. Member Jordan.
Thank you. And as may be obvious, I'm here instead of your colleague, Aaron Tiedemann, who's in London visiting his newborn nephew. So it's an interesting prospect to contemplate as an alternate. Takes me back to having asthma as a 3-year-old, and I still have asthma. It's one of the few people, I think, of my generation, it's fair to say. I didn't know anybody else in my school that had asthma. So I am certainly sympathetic to the need.
Sorry, Chair, can you ask individuals that aren't speaking to mute? It's really difficult to hear Mr. Jordan. Sorry about that.
Absolutely. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Nick, would you mind muting? And anyone who is not speaking at this moment, please mute your device.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm certainly sympathetic to the need for treatment. I've been treated many times myself in my life. Part of the reason I'm here now, I hadn't thought about before, is because I have asthma. So I think that led me on a direction of trying to improve the environment in our society. That said, I think the proposition to give $15 million to hospital for treatment rather than focusing on long-term prevention by further reducing pollution sources is outside of the mission of the organization. I will also note that the voters of Alameda County passed a 0.5% sales tax in March of 2020. 20% of which approximately will go to the hospital for legal reasons of legal conflict that didn't start getting collected until July of last year. So those revenues haven't been realized to the hospital yet. It's projected to that 20% of that revenue will be $30 million a year. I did not vote for that measure because it's a regressive way of funding healthcare to tax goods rather than services. But so there is substantial revenue coming to the hospital that it did not have previously. And I would far prefer to see staff develop more of a program to reduce gas stoves. There's a wide body of scientific literature, which I actually work at the institution. I had nothing to do with the research, but I work at the institution that was one of the ones that originated this research, Lawrence Berkeley Lab. And it's been shown in the literature to be responsible for a not insubstantial portion of asthma attacks. And so I think there is a lot that could be done with that money to actually reduce indoor air pollution in frontline households and disadvantaged households. With all that, I move a direction that staff do not pursue further development of this grant possibility to the hospital.
Thank you, President. I'm actually not entertaining any motions at the moment. We're just giving direction.
Okay.
And I actually, I'm going to take some privilege as chair and speak out of order and just let you know, I had some similar thoughts to you because I grew up with asthma as well, and it was environmentally induced. And I had these questions for the representatives at Children's Hospital Oakland, because we are doing the induction cooking programs that can be directly tied to the people who are actually having the emergency room visits. So there is a way to blend these programs together. It's just a thought, but if we know who's got, who are these high propensity families who are being impacted by not only where they live, but by the gas stoves in their homes, we can reach them directly through this type of program and run studies to see exactly how these impacts are. So I just wanted to put that in there, that I was having similar thoughts about gas stoves in people's homes and how they impact kids and families with asthma. But next up, Chair Eldred. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if you would entertain a response. I think the induction stove portion of the budget that we just passed was $1 million plus or minus all in. And so it seems like it's the tail of the dog relative to the $15 million. So if anything, I would think those numbers should be reversed. And I would hope that the hospital, even if it didn't receive funding, would be open to partnering, because I think you have a great idea that they know the population, they know the people who most benefit. So I think that is a great idea to develop a partnership there, but I hope they wouldn't condition on EBCE making a donation.
Okay, thank you. Nick, did you want to respond?
Yeah, just sort of 2 points. I think to the point around the induction cooktops, I think the biggest challenge we face with induction cooktops is not money, it's ability to scale and awareness. So we could put $50 million in an induction cooktop program. I just don't think that we're in a place today where we could spend that money because you have to acquire customers and you have to actually convince customers that cooking with electric, which for a long time has been really frowned upon and looked down on, is something that they want to do. So I think to the point, we're just not in the amount of money we're putting into induction cooking is not a function of budget. It's a function of what we sort of realistic throughput in the short run. I think the second point around the partnerships cost money. If we're going to ask any institution at that scale to work with us, whether it's children's hospital or otherwise, they need resources to provide that kind of wraparound service. And so going and sort of seeking to establish a partnership, whether it's Oakland Children's or Alameda Health System or really, frankly, any sort of such institution is going to be a challenge if we don't bring resources to support the work on their end.
Okay, thank you. Chair Eldred.
Thank you. So again, I have been inundated with lots and lots of really creative ideas from the community and lots of feelings. And I'm going to tell you that some of these ideas are brilliant. And the thing that I heard from the Community Advisory Committee and the thing that we were recommending is that this get pulled and an actual RFP process was started so people knew that they could submit a proposal for this money, that Children's is one of the places that can in fact submit their proposal, and that there is some guidelines around how we would review that as opposed to just picking a project and doing that separately. There are some valid legal concerns that were raised tonight during the closed session. I was looking up the enabling legislation and looking at the restrictions inside of that, and I will say that that is seriously worth looking closer at. But that there are a variety of ways that we might be able to do both things. If we work with Children's Hospital and do something like do energy efficiency for the hospital, a facility that size spends a lot of money on their electric bill. The building that we had when I worked at the nurses, that was a huge amount of money. They can, and things like solar panels and backup and all this kind of stuff, there's ways that we can work with the hospital within our purview that can result in savings of substantial amounts of money. There's just some really, really good ideas that have come in, and as opposed to pursue what this looks like more, create a process where we can, where the community has the ability to submit ideas. We've already seen a whole bunch come in, and then all of those ideas are evaluated together. And I think that there's a way to do it so we can get the end results that people want and stay within our purview. No one wants kids to have asthma. No one is opposed to the hospital, right? Like nobody has ever said that. I do though hear a really consistent frustration with this kind of coming out of the blue and it not being accessible to the public in the way that it should be. So I would encourage, if direction is given to staff, that we come up, even if what you decide that you want a public health thing and that what we're doing is addressing things around asthma and air pollution, that what we come up with is a staffed proposal. So even if that means hiring a staff to do it for $15 million, we can afford a staff, and come up with an actual proposal to address these things in the community that is transparent and appropriate for a public entity.
Thank you, Chair Eldred. Member Harris.
Yes, I want to start out by saying that I do think it's part of our mission to attack the results as well as the causes of climate change and GHGs. So my concern is not about that. I am concerned about the idea of a sole provider that's been selected in this way. But I also recognize the staffs need to have larger contracts, fewer larger contracts as an effective way to do their work. So I think what I would like to suggest, instead of what Member Jordan has suggested, is that we give the staff direction to seek a large contract with someone who will work on dealing with the results as well as the causes of GHGs, but who will also be responsible for collecting data about those causes, as you mentioned, Chair Martinez. Whether that might be Children's, it might be someone else. I'm not asking, Nick, that you take this 15 million and break it into 45 pieces and give everybody tiny grants. What I'm asking is that we see who else is out there that might be able to fulfill your vision. I'm not comfortable as a board member of a public agency, and this is a public agency, spending ratepayers' money without that process. So I like the vision a lot. My issue is more on how we got to this particular answer, and we may get right back to this answer, and I would be totally excited if we did, but I want us to go through these steps. Thank you very much. So I guess I'd like to make a motion, but I can do that later or now, Chair, if you like.
Let's get everyone a chance to talk.
All right, thank you.
Member Patino.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, I used to work with grants at UC Berkeley, and the money is not given up all at once. So this would be over years, and certain benchmarks would have to be made. So the money would not be given out at once. And forgive me, I did have to step away for another meeting. And I do want to address one of the speakers earlier in the public said that we should be putting in money towards getting heavy vehicles more energy efficient and dispensing less emissions. Well, that's in this budget also. So we can walk and chew gum over here. So I think it's a great idea, but if others on the board want to take a more cautious approach, I'm okay with that too. But you know, we can do multiple things at once. That's one thing that this staff has shown remarkable ability to do. And the thing is, whether or not we address the root causes, well, we will address the root causes of asthma. There are kids right now that are suffering from it. And a lot of them, the Children's Hospital is one of their only places to go. I'm on the board of directors of Traversio Vasquez Health Center. We get many kids with asthma at very young ages, and their only hope, you know, once Traversio's done everything they can, is to go to Children's Hospital. And yes, they have an endowment, but that money has to be used for a lot of other things. It's not just asthma; it's cancer. There's a lot of other things that go into this, and they have to stay fiscally viable. So it's not giving money to a huge conglomerate with hundreds of millions here, hundreds of billions there. The money's being put to good uses for research and other items. I do like this project. I'm 100% behind it, but if we need to slow down a little bit to make sure that we dot all our I's and cross all our T's, let's do it. But we can walk and chew gum. Let's not forget that we have a great team here, and we can do both. Thank you.
Member Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's admirable to want to help individuals that have been impacted by these issues. So I concur with a lot of comments that Director Harrison made. I would like to see, though, next steps in terms of an outline, you know, an RFP, and see if there are other health clinics out there, other providers that we can partner with. So I think we could spread the love. I hear Trustee Patino's comment with respect to Traversio Vasquez and Hayward, and the end result is Children's Hospital in Oakland, but at the same time, we have our own clinics within our respective cities. So I think there's a way to get at the issue that's more neighborhood focused. And I would also like to see the comments that the chair made. And when we're working with these families, some type of referral system. So that way we can offer electrification directly in their home so we could have a greater impact for the entire family. So this is not something I am opposed to, just agree with the idea of slowing things down and having more community input. Thank you.
Great. And I haven't implemented it so far, but if I hear a dog, I want to see it. So Elisa, want to see your dog?
I'll get him in a few minutes.
All right, Member Monroe.
I just wanted to, so I like this idea from the start. I really appreciate all the comments about it. I am not opposed to slowing it down, to making sure that we understand what we're doing and why we're doing and why we're doing this as opposed to that. When I made the process I talked about earlier in terms of understanding short-term, medium-term, and long-term, I think that would help me anyway understand this project. What I really appreciated about what I think it was Member Patino said in terms of there's kids right now, and does address, yes, I know we have neighborhood projects, neighborhood programs, in as much as it's duplicated those, yeah, no, but that's not what I'm hearing from it. So again, having that I don't want to say due diligence, because I think the due diligence has been done, but making sure that the process is made plain, I think is really important. And yeah, I like the walking and chewing gum. That's all.
Great, thank you, Member Monroe. Member Cox, you have your hand raised. Did you have comments, or is that from before?
I do have comments to be made. I like the idea of being able to go out for some sort of competitive solicitation as RFP and putting together the different areas that we want to touch upon, whether it's health clinics or medical centers that are in different communities, to kind of spread the love, but also those that would have a greater impact. And those are kind of the terms or the scope of work that could be addressed in a competitive solicitation, so we could then establish some sort of criteria of what would be the winning bidder for the solicitations, and allowing multiple awards based on the different areas and the different scopes of work that can be spec'd out and defined. And I think that it would be another way that the community could then be able to respond in open, fair competition and receiving the input, and also helping to see how we could, add in some other parts of what other partnerships do some of these other medical facilities or clinics, whatever you want to call it, that are health organizations or health-based organizations, or working with faith-based or working with other nonprofits, and seeing how some other ideas could come up that would allow some further ideas that could be discussed, or any other suggestions or value add type services to the community, and what's the community benefits. And so it's something that could be easily, it takes a while to definitely put together, but I think it would just be a way of being able to have others provide input, and we see how things go, and set up a sub, with the procurement department and the others that are there as part of Nick's staff, that you would have different people from different parts of the organization be on the valuation committee, as well as input from the board members or ad hoc committee for something like this to review the solicitation. So I just think it's just another way of how to dice and slice something that could have a big impact, and just open it up and see what the results will come about in the bidding proposals.
Thank you, Member Cox. Member Harrison, you put your hand down. So does anyone else want to make any comments? I will return the floor to Nick to respond to what he's heard, and just so we understand what fits into what you suggested and what would require a different process.
You know, I've heard a lot of comments and suggestions. And so, you know, I think it's going to be hard to sort of formulate every single one. I do think a couple things. One, you know, all along this proposal was very much focused on supporting, you know, the 10 plus federally qualified health clinics that operate across the service territory, right? Whether it's Tiburcio Vasquez or the Alameda County Juvenile Justice Health Center, or you know, one of many. So, you know, I think that was always sort of the expectation, that, you know, they would be explicitly sort of explicit beneficiaries of anything. And, you know, I think that that's something that needs to be clearly articulated. And, you know, to the point around spreading the love, that is the intent, but let's put a lot more detail and specificity around, you know, what that looks like. And that makes a ton of sense. I think the one thing I heard that, you know, I think becomes a bit of a challenge from a timing and from an impact and from a resource perspective is putting out a full public solicitation. You know, in the end, if you're going to be granting these dollars over 5 years, so it's really $3 million, $3 to $5 million a year over 5 years. It's not $15 million and then $15 million. And we want to maximize the benefit. I think a public solicitation, you know, may not be have the intended effect of, you know, we'll get lots and lots of ideas. It's a lot of staff effort. It's hard to quantify exactly what the impact, especially as you sort of open it up broadly. And so if we're comparing planting trees to investing in pediatric asthma, that is a hard, so that's going to be not a difficult thing to accomplish from a sort of a quantitative perspective. So I think a lot of everything what I've heard essentially, I think can be kind of reflected in the process proposed around bringing back a much more detailed overview of, based on integrating this feedback around, particularly around things like spreading the love, making sure there's a lot of community impact, direct community impact at the front line, and putting that into a document that can be sort of discussed and reviewed at the executive committee, and then give the executive committee an opportunity to decide how and where it wants to refer this project. And that's something that would happen, I think, in the July timeframe. And based on that referral, we would then, you know, come back to the board or not, again, based on what that executive committee referral looks like.
Is there any objection to this moving to executive committee? Member Harrison? I'm sorry, Member Eldred, you had your hand up first.
The overwhelming and consistent feedback and absolute across the board support from every member of the CAC across all the jurisdictions was that this wasn't okay, and that there needs, like, there is more than one group out there that can handle a $15 million grant over 3 to 5 years, and that there needs to be a process involved with this. A grant of this size needs to be approached with the respect that it's due, and it doesn't have to take a long time. We are part of these solicitations on a regular basis, and you know, with an agency this big, we should be able to handle having a public process. Like, we can do that, and so it is important that this is something that happens, and it happens properly. So I would say that all of our members were like, we should have the opportunity to have other folks weigh in on this.
Thank you. Member Hannon. Mike, I'm not able to hear you. You might want to try turning off your video.
Yes, Madam Chair. Am I coming in clearly?
Loud and clear. Wait, now we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize.
No problem.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize. You know, we can have a conversation on this issue all evening long. I'm more inclined to want to have a proposal before us that we can vote either up for or down for. And so I would support staff's recommendation that we bring this to the executive board, have an opportunity to review it, bring it back to the entire board. We either vote it up or we vote it down. But we can discuss this issue all night. We're not going to get anywhere until we have something specific on the table for us to vote on. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you very much. As chair of the executive board, I need to have some clarity as to the direction that this body wants to go in. You know, I've heard different things this evening. So I just want to be very clear so that we're all on the same page, and that conversation is what the board in general wants us to have so that we can be on the mark when we come back with a recommendation. I just need to have clarification on that.
Thank you, Member Lopez. I don't think we're going to get consensus tonight because, as Member Hannon noted, there are a lot of different details that we would have to agree upon to get consensus. I've heard different things from different people. Member Harrison, did you want to weigh in now?
Yeah, I would like to try to get consensus. And I think I have a proposal for that. So if I could make a motion, I'd appreciate it. This is a good moment.
You can, but Member Marquez still has a raised hand.
Okay, yes, great. Please go ahead.
Sorry, the dog is acting up again. I'm sorry, Chair, were you recognizing me? I apologize. Yes, okay, sorry about that. So I'm curious to hear the motion, but a suggestion I have is I think there's a difference in opinion in the approach. So I think what might work best is presenting 2 to 3 options to the executive board. In RFB process, I'm hearing that loud and clear. I'm hearing the term sheet and maybe a hybrid. I'm not sure what that is, but I think there needs to be 2 to 3 options presented to the executive committee that could be voted on as a recommendation and then come back to the full body. I just think we're not going to be able to resolve this tonight. And I think it's unfair for Nick to try to get consensus from, I don't know how many of us are here tonight, 20, I don't know. But I think there is a way to move forward and hopefully we can get there. So love to hear what Director Harrison has to offer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. I'm sorry, Kate, Mike's got his hand raised one more time and I want you to get the last word. So I apologize. Mike?
I apologize. I take my hand down.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Kate.
Okay. What I think, this is what I propose. I think we should have a 2-part resolution. One is, and we would vote in 2 parts. One is that the board supports the vision of examining spending funding on dealing with health impacts, especially in the area of pediatric asthma that result from pollution and greenhouse gases and climate impacts. And that we're looking to support a methodology for examining those impacts and also the cause and also the way of dealing with that. So if we vote first on a vision, and if we agree on this vision, then I think we can send a couple of options to the executive committee. But I want to know first whether we can agree on this vision, because I like the vision a lot and I don't want to lose that, but I have some concerns about the process. So is there a possibility we could first vote on that and then move on to what we might offer as a process?
If you're okay, Kate, noting the hour, let's just do a straw poll because I don't think you're going to get a thumbs down on the vision.
Okay, good.
I'll second the motion though, if you need a second.
Thank you.
Great. We've got a motion for Member Harrison and a second for Member Marquez for a straw poll. Are folks okay with the vision as stated by Member Harrison? Give me a thumbs up if you are. We got one, no, thumbs down from Member Jordan. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dan, are you thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm sorry, I must have missed could someone repeat it for me? I apologize.
It's a two-part, but the first part is we're voting on whether we support the vision of spending this funding on examining the health impacts, especially in the area of pediatric asthma resulting from pollution and greenhouse gases and climate impacts, and look for an organization that, and then we can talk secondarily about how that happens, look for an organization that can help us with this large vision and do the kind of data collection and community outreach that we're seeking.
And through the chair, this is, you said to examining and addressing the impacts. Is that part of the vision?
Yeah, examining the impacts resulting from GHGs and pollution, the health impacts, especially in the area of pediatric asthma, and looking for a approach that gets us back to examining the causes, which we can do through a data analysis through the hospital. But I feel like we first need to agree, do we like this idea? And I think not everyone does, but it seems generally popular.
We had a majority of those present. So again, I just want to note the hour. It's 8:24 where I am, so it's 8:27. Kate, I'm not trying to stop the process. I'm just giving a time check. And I want buy-in from everyone here that they want to continue with this meeting. I think that's fine. Member Lopez, did you want to make notes? And then Member Jordan, and then
I'm listening to what Member Harrison is saying, and the word including is an important word. Are you saying not just? You're saying others as well, other opportunities? I mean, what do you mean by including?
Okay.
Are you saying solely looking at it?
No, that's what I'm trying to avoid in this motion. What I'm saying is we're supportive of a vision that examines the causes, the health causes of pollution and climate, particularly in the area of pediatric asthma, and that with an institution that can examine where those impacts are coming from, not just how to deal with them. So what I heard from Chair Martinez, which really compelled me in this direction, was the idea that a larger institution can say, we can examine what's going on in these kids' homes. We can understand how to stop this happening in 20 years, not just these kids. And that's what I'm trying to get across.
Okay, and then clarify, when you say examine, are you saying it's more academic, or are you saying it's more like logistical? Because I've heard the CEOs say, like, going into health clinics and so forth. That's not examining. That's actually like
that's the logistical upfront. But behind all that is a data analysis that says what the heck is causing all this. So we're dealing with the children today, but we're not leaving behind. Maybe we got rid of those stoves. This would help in the future. That's what I'm trying to accomplish, is this linkage. And I think that's part of Nick's vision. And I think we're going to find there aren't many institutions that can do that. But I first want to get an agreement on this vision. I hope this helps. I'm trying to be helpful.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So I think there is a lot of information out there. If what you're saying is that somebody should do an extensive lit review and gather this to share with all of us what the results of that are.
Sure. That's not what I believe Councilmember Harrison is suggesting. I think maybe to restate, and I believe what you're suggesting is there support to provide, a grant or grants to an institution that can look that can both provide care, but also look and sort of understand the causes, partner with East Bay to go and address those causes.
Yeah.
So it's a research component. So to say, like, hey, we really want to think about the causes. I think from a procedural standpoint, there's no requirement for this to be a resolution. Certainly the board can take a resolution, but this is not there's no action item here. So, I think if Vice Chair Lopez if you feel like you have gotten sufficient sort of feedback, we can then work on setting the sort of agenda for how this matter is agendized. And so I think generally there was thumbs up, Kate, to your premise. And so I guess, Vice Chair Lopez, if that premise is a premise that you feel is worth examining, then that can be sort of certainly the focus of the examination. And now the second question are the options, RFP, not RFP. Do you want to look at two? So that was what I heard from Director Marquez. So from Director Marquez, it was, don't come with one. Say we can go an RFP route, or we could go a bilateral route.
Or a sole source.
Or sole source route.
Yeah.
And a sole source route looks like this, and an RFP looks like this. And we'll leave those two options. And the overarching goal is we want to look at, we want to address this sort of broad sort of question of the impacts of climate change and air pollution, particularly as it relates to pediatric asthma. So I think that's a fairly clear sort of, from my perspective, in terms of what I would work with the chair of our executive committee to sort of produce in terms of both description and options, and then within those options, specifics of what the options would look like. I feel like I hear what you're saying, Director Harrison, and can execute on that. I guess the question obviously is that what folks want? But Vice Chair Lopez, maybe. Are we on the same page of what the options could be if you take Director Harrison, Director Marquez's proposals?
I just want to do the will of the body. So whatever that is, and then I would presume the clerk would have it, the motion or whatever consensus or direction, that we give, since it's not a vote, it's not an action item, but it's more of we're doing some consensus building here. That would be good. And then of course the attorney can just make sure that language looks what it should look like for the agenda, and then we're set to go.
Member Harrison, does that conclude your thoughts?
Yeah. And I'm concerned that we still have a couple members that aren't happy with this direction, but I think in a way we have to take the straw poll because we need to move on with some majority consensus about where we're going. So
thank you. Yeah, we still have opportunities to weigh in. That we're adding public meetings to the process of this consideration, not taking them away. So we've got the executive committee and then the full board will have chances to hear this discussion move forward. Noting that, Member Jordan, do you have additional comments?
Yeah, just to the extent I think that financing healthcare is beyond the mission of this agency. Funding medical research is even that much further beyond the remit of this agency. So I don't support either of those directions.
Thank you, Member Jordan. Chair Eldred.
Thank you. For clarity, I just want to read back what I heard, and I just took the things that people said, and I just want to make sure that what I am reporting back is clear and see if this works. So it looks like supportive of a vision that examines the impacts of climate change and air pollution, particularly as it relates to pediatric asthma, and looking for ways to address where those impacts are coming from or the root causes, not just the after effects. Is that's right? Okay, cool.
Okay, Member Kavanaugh.
Yes, thank you. Given the hour, I won't repeat what's been said. We did hear from many people in the community, and I think Member Jordan summarized it in his previous comments the best. And as much as this is all really great work and important work to do, it's just not clear to me that this is the highest and best use of our funds. So I'm just struggling with this being the best strategic alignment for EBCE and whether we're the right person to lean in to get that work done. There's so much great work we can do, and I know we really want to work with the disadvantaged communities. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, but just I appreciate the comments from Member Jordan and the personal sharing of his own story and still being able to vote in this direction. So unfortunately, as much as this is an issue we want to tackle, I just don't know that it's our job to attack it in this way.
Thank you. Member Marquez.
Chair, can you please just report out how many members in general supported it? I can't tally everybody's thumbs, so if you don't mind.
It was a majority of everyone present. I counted at least 6 thumbs. Very good. And then Member Harrison and Member Jordan, I still have raised hands for you. Do you have closing comments? Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for hanging in there for this item. I really appreciate moving through it so thoughtfully. We have another action item to get through tonight. Excuse me, my iPad just locked up, so I need to open it up so I can get to the agenda. And we are on to item 15, which is approval of the Fifth Amendment to the employment agreement with Nick Chassett, CEO. And I will ask our general counsel to please read the bullet points of the items on this amendment.
Madam Chair, would you like me to share? I'm going to share the agreement on screen. Can you give me a second?
Yes, please. And if the clerk would facilitate that, please put that on screen for the record.
Hopefully this is right. Okay, good. I know it looks a little small. Let me see what I can do here. Is that working? Okay. Hopefully that looks a little better. Oh, it looks like Adrian, did you share it?
I have shared it.
Okay, good. Like all of a sudden I didn't have control. Okay, good evening, Chair, members of the board. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We are here with this item to ask you to approve a Fifth Amendment to Nick Chassett's CEO employment agreement. As you know, under the Brown Act, we are required to make a verbal announcement anytime we approve a new compensation package for an executive like a CEO. So I'm going to make that announcement, but I am also happy to answer any questions about the contract. So with this amendment, Nick's annual salary would be $425,000 effective May 18th. He gets vacation 6 weeks annually and 3 weeks are refundable or can be cashed out. With respect to retirement, he is eligible to join any other programs that are available to other EBCE employees. And there is an employee matching of up to 15% of his salary, limited by any applicable tax limitations. His car allowance is $60 a month, and he will be entitled to receive a retention bonus of a total of $50,000, but that will be spread out over 4 installments in the coming year of $12,500 each. And keeping that retention bonus is premised on Mr. Chassett entering into a subsequent agreement next year. So finishing out the term of this agreement and entering a new agreement. And if that does not occur, he would have to repay any amount that he had received. And that is my verbal announcement with this item, but I'm also happy to answer any questions from the board.
Thank you. Colleagues, is there any question on this item for General Counsel or for the CEO? Seeing none, is there public on this item, Mr. Clerk?
There's no public comment for this item. Well, hold on one second before I, don't have that in front of me. No, there's no public comment for this item.
Very good. And seeing no hands raised, I will go ahead and close public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for discussion. Colleagues, any discussion? In lieu of that, I'd be happy to entertain a motion in a second. Member Monroe?
I'll move the amendment.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Member Monroe, a second from Member Narum. Please call the roll.
My apologies. I just want to make sure I have this copied down. Okay, no thank you. Alameda County. Albany.
It's an inexperienced alternate. I abstain.
Great, thank you. Hold on one second. There we go. Dublin.
Berkeley.
Aye.
Oh, Berkeley. Yeah, and Berkeley, my apologies.
Aye.
And Dublin.
Dublin, aye.
Thank you. Fremont.
Yes.
Thank you. Hayward.
Aye.
Livermore.
Aye.
Thank you. Newark.
Aye.
Oakland.
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
Thank you. Pleasanton.
Aye.
Tracy. Union City.
Aye.
San Leandro.
Aye.
Emeryville.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you so much. That brings us to item 16, board member and staff announcements, including a request to place items on future board agendas. Member Monroe, I see a hand raised.
So I was late this evening, and I just have to be very excited about why I was late. So Livermore just opened Livermorium Park, which is at 116 Livermore Avenue. We have an element named after the city, Livermorium. We now have a really nice water feature ball with all the entire atom laid out on the concrete. And I was reflecting, and we have facts about it. One of the facts is that we have Livermorium and we have Berkeleyum, and those are the only two cities in the US that we have elements named after. We also have Californium, so that we are in a state that has an element named after it. There's Americium or something, so we have, that's the continent. All very exciting, but what I hadn't realized is that until I looked at it, is that not only are Livermorium and Berkeleyum both in California, which says something about us being totally awesome as a state, but they're also both in Alameda County. So there we go, and they're at kind of opposite ends of the county, opposite in a couple of different ways. So I just thought that was a fair bit of fun, particularly given that we're a board representing Alameda County and beyond. That's my announcement.
Great, thank you. Member Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you. Well, before I put this on as an item, it might already be an item that's coming up, and that's that discussion around the stipend for the CAC. Is that coming up?
I believe that's on our next agenda, correct, Nick?
Not just for the CAC, it's the general topic of stipends is coming up. It's, I think we wanted to revisit our stipend policy for these meetings, our subcommittee meetings, and the CAC meetings.
Thank you.
Very good. Adrian, would you mind ending share screen, please? And next up is Member Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to request an item on a future agenda to when staff deems appropriate, when they have time. I don't know if it needs to be 3 or 4 months out, but just looking at the local development plan and assessing where we're at with executing the projects, how much we've actually accomplished. If that's already proposed for a future agenda, then that's fine. But if it's not, I just wanted to flag that. And then I also wanted to invite all of my community members, all of the community members and colleagues to the City of Hayward's Wellness Festival plan for our 2nd annual Juneteenth celebration. It's going to be Saturday, June 18th from 10 to 1 p.m. This event is produced by the Hayward Chamber of Commerce, Black Business Roundtable, in partnership with Hayward Farmers Market. Juneteenth Hayward will be hosted by CBS Survivor Season 4 winner Pcia Robinson and is free to the public thanks to sponsors East Bay Community Energy. So thank you so much, Subaru, One Dealership of Hayward, and other community leaders. So please join us on Saturday, and this is a Bartable event. Thank you. And there's Zito if you got to see him.
Thank you for the dog tax. Member Cox.
Thank you. I kind of have that opening with Council Member Marquez. I wanted to report out, a lot of you may not know this, but as the first Afro-American elected to Fremont City Council in almost 65 years, we are celebrating through a City Council referral that I put through over a year ago. City of Fremont is now implementing, thanks to the support of City Council members, to celebrate Juneteenth in the history of Fremont. So this is very exciting. And it's a celebration, really, as we know that it's freedom from the slaves that were in Galveston, Texas, that over 2 years later, after the Emancipation Proclamation that was produced by President Lincoln, that 2 years later, there was still enslavement happening in Texas. And that's part of the reason why we're celebrating that. But also, it's not just an Afro-American holiday, it's a holiday to celebrate freedom from everyone. And it's a day that should be recognized as one that will be a recommitment of all of us from all nationalities, people of all age, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or cultural heritage, and even citizenship and disability, physical attributes, social economic status, that all of us come together and recommit how we can have a just and inclusive society by working together to build a better community. And by all of us doing that, and I know I applaud all of the other East Bay cities and other cities across the United States that have been doing Juneteenth for many years. And I appreciate the local cities that have been carrying it out. And now we're working forward to do some bigger and better things down south in Alameda County and the East Bay, but look forward to the continued partnership. And I really thank all of you for all of your hard work and support in trying to bring justice and equality, diversity, equality, and inclusion in our communities. Thank you so much, and happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth, Member Cox. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Member Lopez, Vice Chair Lopez, excuse me.
Thank you. I'd like to just request that when we adjourn, that we adjourn in honor of Juneteenth. Our city is also honoring that formally the first time this year. And while we're at it, the city of San Leandro has turned 150 years old, and each council member has a special project. So I have a special project that I've taken on, and San Leandro would like to invite everybody this month. It is on the 28th at 6 o'clock at our main public library, and it is an exhibit on redlining housing discrimination in San Leandro. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Lopez. And I see no further hands raised. Thank you all so much for hanging in there. It is 8:47 p.m. in our territory, and where I am, it's 10:47 p.m. in Nayarit, Mexico. So good night from here. And we're adjourned in honor of Juneteenth to our next meeting on July 20th at 5 p.m. See you all there, and thank you for everything.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.